I'd like to call to order the Carson City Board of Equalization on Tuesday, February 27th, 2018 at 9 a.m. Agenda item A, call to order and determination of quorum.
Chairperson Bach.
Here.
Member McFadden.
Here.
Member Rasner.
Here.
Member Simmons.
Here.
Member Wilson.
Here.
The quorum's present.
Great, thank you for that. On to agenda item B, public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Board of Equalization that is not on the agenda. Is there any public? Seeing none. Move on to agenda item C for possible action approval of minutes from February 20th, 2018's meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 20th, 2018.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is Jill. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Before we go on to agenda item D, should we swear everybody in that's going to be testifying?
Sure. Anybody who's testifying, if you could just stand up and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Agenda item D for possible action, petition for review of assessed valuation of Tahoe 3 LLC located at 1213 Fairview Avenue, APN 009-552-03. Would the assessor like to give us the information?
Okay, I'd like to introduce, good morning, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Denise Gillot with Carson City Assessor's Office. I would just like to introduce the parcel 009-55203 located at 1213 Fairview Drive, owned by Tahoe 3 LLC. The subject property is a 4.93-acre light industrial parcel with 2,178 square feet of office space, 20,720 square feet of storage space, and 264 square feet of garage space.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Good morning, Mr. Serpa. How are you today?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Oh, good.
Is it okay too?
Yes, indeed.
Outside?
If you would, please, sir, state your name for the record and tell us what's going on.
It's on, huh? I don't do this much. John Serpa, I'm representing my son Keith Serpa, who owns the property. We met yesterday with the assessor's office, and as they did at the state board corrected them on the way they calculated the valuation by a cap rate of the income. And they had, the county had, or the assessor had identified that you couldn't use property taxes as expense, and the state board corrected them. And then there was a discussion of a piece of property in the back that was not developed. And as we discussed yesterday with the assessor, they used the state's value for the proper 9%, but somehow or another the assessor's department thought that was just for the buildings. And they now understand that it's land and buildings. So the leftover land in the back was not that usable, and as we discussed, would be a value of somewhere around $1 a foot for the extra land, which I believe is around 50,000 feet. In the package that wasn't available till Thursday afternoon, I don't know if you folks looked through that 100 pages or not, but the one page number 13 is the comparable sales. And by the comparable sales they used, I built 3 of the properties, which would be sale number 2, which consists of what they call ice storage now on Highway 50. It's a concrete tilt-up, 16 to 20-foot tall concrete tilt-up buildings with offices, a 2-story church in the front, South Carson mini storage, which is right next door to this one, which this piece we're talking about is actually an addition to South Carson mini storage, which Dear Bank of America, after 15 years, decided not to renew the loan, but they didn't have it on this piece. The one next door, South Carson Mini Storage, has a 32,000 square foot office building, plus the mini storages. And the third one is AAA Mini, used to be AAA Mini Storage, right next to the ice storage on Highway 50. And they use values for these comps sales between $42 and $48. So they came up with a $43 value for ours. That's what they billed it as. My only concern is the other properties that they have listed are only billed at between $22 and $28. So they say these are what they use to verify what our property was worth, but they didn't use the sales values. Their bills, the actual tax bills sent out, have values at 30-40% less, and ours is at 100% of what they came up with for a value off of sales. And I understand that they have to do it by a land value and improvement value, but that's fine and dandy. But the way they came up with their valuation, they valued ours by comp sales. If the law says they can't do it this way, then somebody needs to look at it, because why would we pay almost 1.5 times the comps that they used? And we have a mini storage with the office and living quarters, and these other ones are 32,000 square feet of offices, cost 2-3 times as much as a mini storage, concrete tilt-up buildings, which cost at least twice as much. And I don't see that being equal anywhere around, even with the correction. I was told originally 3 years ago that they were valuing basically on a performance profit and loss at a 9 cap, and that's where they came up with the 775 the state board there. I didn't know that they were doing this till I got the package Thursday night. So I know I'm talking a lot of stuff, but I have copies here of the summary. If I can give that to you, and at least it'll be of record. How many copies do you want?
There's 5 of us up here, and Tamar needs a copy as well. And however many Dave wants to keep.
It goes away. If you're not familiar with them, I just have some very poor photos that show a comparable property sitting side by side. And it's pretty hard for me to agree that a mini-storage building with an office compares to 32,000 square feet of office spaces, office buildings.
Okay, Mr. Serpa, do you want to add some more before we open it up for questions? Hit your button if you would. I think time's out pretty quickly.
Basically, no, I'll answer any questions if I'm not very clear on them.
Okay, does anybody from the board have questions for Mr. Serpa? Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Serpa, I have a question for you. I understand that you don't agree with what the assessor is using, and sometimes they have what they have. Do you have any other documentation that you'd like to provide that would be a better,
No, I think this page 13 says it all. They have an average price of $45.
so you don't have any additional evidence? Is that what you're saying?
No, but I mean, this page here, which I don't have copies of the property taxes, I had my son's secretary look them this morning, that they're using this to come up with $43 billing to us, but the other 5 properties they have on here, they're not billing them any more than between $22 and $28 a square foot. So if they say this is what they use to value ours, then they should bill us accordingly as they billed everyone else. In other words, they said that the only reason they use the sales is to confirm that they're below market. But if they're going to be below market on everybody else's property, why would they put us in at 100% of the market?
Do you have an appraisal or anything that would show what your value is?
I got this Thursday afternoon. Normally, I assume you guys got this Thursday afternoon.
So the procedure typically is when you have a dispute in your taxes, you provide evidence to the county to dispute your particular parcel.
They received, what they requested before was a profit and loss statement, and that's what the state board heard. And that's where the state board came back with a $775,000. Like I said, this is just, to me, Thursday. If I had more time, I guess I could do something, but all I'm looking for is equalization. If the 5 sales that they show here, they actually show 3, but one of them has 3 properties on it, what could be more comparable than what they bill other people's for?
Did you have a chance to look at the income approach to value on page 23? I know you mentioned, did you have a chance to look at the income approach to value on page 23? I know you mentioned the state board used that approach previously, so I thought you might find that to be more accurate.
This is the one where they did not expense off the property tax, and the state board said they had to. And then when they charged off the property tax as an expense,
Back to the assessor's office.
Thank you. Denise Gillette, Assessor's Office. Okay, well, I'm going to start by just kind of talking about our process. So when we receive an appeal, prior to that, what we do is we value based on cost approach. We do market value for the land, and then we, as you all know, we value the improvements per cost minus depreciation. And our job is to verify at that point, whether it's through income or through market, like Mr. Serpa said, that we do not exceed any type of market value. And so however, when an appeal comes in, then we are required to do any approach that's necessary to help kind of determine market value and cost approach, and that's done through market approach, through income approach, and through cost. And so all three of these approaches were completed on this file. And so the assessor's office has provided all three approaches to value. The market approach supports an estimated value of $1,030,410. The cost approach supports a value of $1,245,732. And the income approach supports an estimated value of $1,118,410. So why we did that is he's correct. That's not a typical method that we do for every single commercial property. It's only if we have reason to believe that we might be exceeding, or if there's an appeal and we need to take a look at it. And so we utilize the value that the state board placed on the property, which was $992,800, because it's as a conservative value, because it is in fact below all three approaches to value. And just to speak briefly on the income approach, he is correct in the fact that as last year, when the income approach was submitted, we were excluding the property taxes from the income approach. And what is, I think, a little bit of a misunderstanding is that in fact is not always incorrect. What happens is if you exclude the property taxes from an income and expense statement, you have to do it across the board with all of the properties that you're utilizing to gain, because it is not done the income approach is not done based on the subject property's income and expenses and current vacancy and collection rate. It's done on a market basis. And so when we gather all of our information and we do all of our market studies for the year to arrive at our typical market expenses, our typical vacancy and collection rate, our typical cap rates, when we had a conversation, we went back in and spoke with the members of the board because we were told we were doing it correctly prior to that point. And they stated, in fact, that if we were treating every single market study the same, then what we were doing is it was being included and being included in the cap rate, what is known as a loaded cap rate. And so, in fact, I agreed with Mr. Serpa, or I agree with him in the sense that it's probably the more difficult way to do it. And if we could, and the board said, why are you going to that trouble when you could keep the property taxes in, and you could do that for your other expense and income statements as well, and then you could just use a standard cap rate, because it's hard to extract a loaded cap rate versus a standard cap rate. And so this year we changed the way we were doing it, and if you look at the income approach provided, I believe it is on page that's cost. It is on page 23, correct. We did include the property taxes. They were included, and we changed our entire market data gathering process to, in fact, include it, and it did. The state board was correct. It made things much easier, much clearer, and across the board, when you're representing your income approach, it's a more acceptable way to provide it. And so we did make that change, and that is, in fact, included in these expenses. And I went into a little bit of detail of what is typically included, and one of that you can see is, in fact, the property taxes. If we have a second to take a look at the market approach, I agree with Mr. Serpa in the fact that comp sale 2 is not an ideal comparison. It has multiple parcels. He is correct that one of the parcels has superior office space. It's really difficult when we're trying to find, do a paired sales analysis on a specific use, not just like commercial vacant land or maybe an office space. And so these were the sales that I had. But if you look down in my comments, I did not give much weight to that sale. My weight was put on sales number 3, which is inferior to the subject property. And so, in fact, I agree with Mr. Serpa that sale 2 it's not ideal due to the fact that not even all of the parcels it was a group sale with multiple parcels with, superior land, superior square footage as far as building, and truly not even the parcels included in the sales were not apples to apples. So it's not ideal. It was added to show a sale of a few storage unit properties, but my conservative weight was put on sale number 3, just so we're clear about that. As far as another comment that Mr. Serpa made that, I agree with as well. When he's looking at a tax bill to tax bill, it's a difficult way to look at it for equalization. When you're looking and saying, okay, I'm paying, if you're trying to figure out a price per square foot based on a tax bill, it would be great if we could do it that way. That would probably be a true way, a true definition of equalization. But unfortunately, our office does not deal with the property taxes. We deal with valuation. And so as far as that's concerned, due to the fact that the state of Nevada is based on cost approach, it's, we all know it's based on the age of the property, the square footage, the quality class, and truly the only, market, the only piece of market in there is the land. And so it's, it's unfortunate. I don't have a solution for that. I wish I did. I wish we could find a way to make that a little bit more reasonable and fair, but unfortunately that's not something that our office is capable of doing. And honestly, per statute, nor the treasurer's office. And so, I don't know how to support, I don't have the ability to support a tax bill or to defend another tax bill because it's not something that our office does. One last thing I want to bring up is Mr. Serpa talked about the state board's recommendation. He brought this up yesterday, and I want to thank him for that because our office was reading it in a different manner, and after speaking to the state late yesterday, they agreed that we did with the information provided, we did what we should have done. However, we need some clarification on this. And so I think with that clarification opens up communication with Mr. Serpa to possibly work out, the possibility of price per square foot for the land, because there's some confusion. I'm going to direct you to page 29, and I'll read this to you, and I'll tell you kind of why we did what we did, the state read the same way that Mr. Serpa did, and after reading it 2 or 3 times, I agree with him. We were just not given enough information, and so therefore, and we were not provided with values from the state as of yesterday's conversation either. But what it states is, based on the above findings of fact and conclusions of law, the state board decided by a vote of 3 to 1 to 1, member Johnson recused, to reduce the taxable value to a total of $992,800, using an income approach with a 9% cap rate or capitalization rate, rounded down for the improved portion totaling $775,000, and the value of the undeveloped land totaling $217,800. So, when our office is reading that, we are looking at the total value of $992,800, which is exactly what we did, and we upheld that value for this year as well. Now it states the improved portion of $775,000. We took that to mean the improvements. And then the value of the undeveloped land totaling $217,800, we took that as the land. But Mr. Serpa is correct. That is not what it states, or that is not how we interpreted it is not correct. And so what when we look at it and we really and the state also agrees with this as well, is that the $775,000 in fact includes the improvements and the land that it's sitting on, so the improved land. And the undeveloped land is just that back portion of, there's a setback, and then there's some land that could be developed. So with additional units or whatever Mr. Serba decided to do. And so that totaled the $217,800. So, and he's correct with, the total actual square footage is about 54,450. And they had agreed at a value of $4 a square foot for that back land, now that we're really, really reading it through. And that arrives at the value of the $217,800. The problem with that is we were never given a land value. If we read it that way, we can't just extract a random number from the $775,000 for the land value. And so, we're trying to figure out exactly what their intent was when they made this ruling, because if that $775,000, let's say that it includes the land, and let's say that it's given the $4 a square foot that they gave the back portion, that would give that, for that portion of the developed land, that would give it a value of $652,632. And that leaves the improvements for, let's see here. That leaves the improvements, which includes, it's up here, sorry. Which includes 20,720 square feet of storage units, 2,178 of retail and residential or office, and 264 square foot of garage. That gives it a taxable value of $122,368. And so if we come to that conclusion, I can't imagine that was the intent of the state board, but I can't say for sure, and so we're waiting for some word from the state. But what the problem is that Mr. Serpa is trying to discuss the land value for the parcel for the back half, and then we should probably discuss the front half and make it a total land value. And we truly can't do that at this point because we do not have the extracted land value from the $775,000, and they were not able to provide that to us yesterday. And so, at this point, the $992,800 is extremely supported with all three approaches to value, but we are 100% willing to have a conversation with Mr. Serpa regarding the land value once we can actually obtain one. That's it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the assessor's office?
So now what?
So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Mr. Serpa?
For the meeting we had yesterday, Mr. Dolly and I discussed it with Denise, and it's just like she said, the back piece of property is 54,000 feet. It has a 20-foot setback, which takes care of about a third of it. And as we discussed, in evaluating that piece of property at the same value would do on Fairview frontage and so forth, this property can only be used by coming through the minis. As discussed yesterday, Denise said that, I said it's probably worth $1 a foot, and Denise has agreed that that's probably would be a reasonable value for the back piece with the conditions. So if it's, I don't know if you can leave anything open, but if that's what the assessor agrees, or you agree with the assessor, then I guess we'd be done with this. Only one other comment here. When you talked about your page 23 with the profit income approach, I don't see any worksheet, and those numbers are not the numbers I gave you off our tax return.
No, they're not. They're actually market-derived numbers. And so your numbers are put into my market data to arrive at what their typical expenses, typical vacancy and collections. But they're fairly close to, and I didn't get this year's profit and loss. I have last year and the 2 years prior, but they're pretty close to what you have.
We haven't filed taxes yet. when we file taxes.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to look at them.
Accurate. The rental. Sorry about that. Anyway, I don't have a worksheet on this. Our rents do not come up to this number, so I don't know what number you're using. But the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, you're talking about equal, and as they said, by law, they don't go by the sales, they go by whatever they have to do. But if we're talking equal, if there's a piece of property, which he's just stated, next door to me, which is actually, this is a piece of originally, is property taxed at $27 a foot, how could ours possibly be worth $43? How can ours be taxed at $43 a foot? Anyway, I think
Well, thank you for that. Denise?
Most of my numbers were actually, they were a combination of both national rents and then also through a survey of just about, I think I got a phone call from almost, I want to say at least 3 to 4 of the mini storage owners in Carson City, and through just calling their managers and trying to get their numbers. And so, typical between the storage units, also with the U-Haul and the RV space rental. And so, they're, like I said, they're all market numbers. They are, I want to say, not based on this year's, but based on last year's. I want to say my numbers came out about 30,000 higher than what he stated for last year. So I'd be more than happy to provide. It's not typically how we do that. It's not how we've been told to do it, but I could easily provide, and I'm 90% sure that it would still be over the 900,000, but I would really like to do the math first.
Roy, you have a question?
I don't see how we can override state without any proof in front of us.
Well,
That's what I'm looking for and Mr. Serpa is having a determination on the property values with the assessor's office at this time, and we need a discussion or a determination, but I don't see overriding the state.
Okay. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Serpa, you keep talking about the fact that the taxes, that we're taxing one parcel lower than we're taxing yours. In 2004, and I know you're very aware of this, the Nevada legislature put a property tax cap into place to protect those properties that were built prior to 2004. Actually, it was done in 2005, but they used 2004 as the base year. These properties were actually built in 2008, so they were outside the property tax cap the first year, so they were not protected by any kind of a property tax cap until 2009, which was the first year that they were actually put on the roll, or after they were put on the roll.
So my kind of quandary, if we don't have the number of what the taxable value would be of the land minus the improvement, and we need to rule on this today. If we rule on this today, supporting the state, and numbers come in later when you have the correct data, what happens then? Does it come in front of the board?
Land sales.
Well, I do have support for the land value. However, and I could provide that as well. My thought is because we did open communication with Mr. Serpa yesterday, and it was determined that we were needing some guidance from the state, that we only heard back, I want to say it was like 4:30 yesterday afternoon, and the fact that they weren't able to provide us with numbers. I would agree to put in the work to try to get those numbers and come to some.
Today.
We'll have it?
We have to have something today.
Okay, we have to have something today, and then like we had spoken to Mr. Serpa, I can look at it and do more of like a front foot method for the land, and we could come, hopefully to an agreement. Could it be a stipulation prior to state?
What was you want to know whether or not you can stipulate after the board has met? Well, they would have to approve your stipulation,
Well,
so.
that's the state board. So if the county board rules today and Mr. Serpa appeals to the state, could we stipulate before the state board?
You could come to an agreement, and then I believe that you would have to take it to the state board
Right.
then, because it's under their jurisdiction.
Right.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. Serpa or the assessor's office?
Do you want me to provide the sales?
Mr. Serpa, are you good with your testimony?
I'm sorry?
Are you good with your testimony?
Jeremy has one.
Do you have any other new comments or anything, or do you think you pretty much covered it?
I think we're covered it,
Okay.
and I understand what they're saying. It would have been nice if we could get a package in advance of a hearing. Then it would be all settled. And that's the way it used to be. You used to get packages a couple weeks. I don't know how anybody expects somebody in 1-2 business days to go through this. And just like the assessor couldn't come up with another mistake
Thank you, sir.
that I believe was made.
So this is,
So I understand with Roy up there, you can't overturn it with what you got today.
okay.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what Roy was saying, and so we need to just entertain a motion. Yes.
I just provided the sales that support there's support for the value of the land as is, just to provide that and enter that into evidence. There's both support through sales and through listings.
I would make one recommendation. If the assessor is going to put a package together, that it's pretty much unreasonable to get it 1 or 2 business days beforehand. I don't know how you folks on the board could possibly do it, because I myself and an assistant and a girl couldn't go through the package in 2 days, including the weekend. So now we have something being delivered to us right now, which I don't even know what it is. But anyway, I think Roy stated whatever, and I think we put enough stuff together and he said yesterday he understood the difference, that the only land should be valued is the back 54,000 feet.
Okay. Mr. Dolly.
Mr. Chairman, so first off, we are within the statutory time limit for the packages. The packages are very convoluted anymore because of what is required of us through the state. It takes a lot more effort than it did 20 years ago to put a package together, and so they are out on time within the statutory limit. So the second issue is the fact that you can actually determine and try and figure out, I mean, that's why we provided you with the sale, so that you could tell us what value we should be putting on the improved land, and we would take that from the $775,000, and then also give us a value for the land, the acre and a quarter in the back. And I mean, we would use that, and if Mr. Serpa doesn't like that, then at that point he can appeal it, and we can work with him up until the time that we actually go to the state board. So you have options. You don't just have to go with what the state gave us. We're actually looking for guidance because we would like Yes, the $775,000 does include the improvements and the land that those improvements are on. And so we would like guidance. We would like to know where you sit as far as what kind of a value should be on that land so that we can break it up, because we have to have a value for the improvements and a value for the land itself. We can't just have one value that is set.
Okay.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
Tamara could mark this as Exhibit F for the record, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
That is the 54,450 square feet.
That is correct.
And part of that land is set back, but part of that land could in fact be developed.
Sorry, Dave Dolly. The parcel next door is being valued at $2.75 a foot, and it is a larger parcel, so that's why the value is a little bit less. But then the parcel directly to the east of this parcel is at $4.16 a foot. So, I mean,
How big is that parcel directly to the east?
directly to the east is... $152,024, so it's 3.49 acres. It's very close, but it's on a corner. It's on the corner of Solomon and Fairview.
Okay,
Excuse me.
thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just so we're not confusing something here, are you talking about the back piece that's only accessible through the property, and you're comparing it to a piece of property that's on Fairview?
No, Mr. Serper, I'm talking about the whole thing. We're looking for a land value for the whole
For
parcel.
the whole thing, okay.
If we want to do a bifurcated system and to where we give the one, or where the board wants to give the back 1.25 acres a lower value than the front, or the same value, I don't care, but we're just talking the whole parcel at this point.
I realize that, but what we're talking about is the 54,000 feet in the back, with Denise and I discussed yesterday, with the problem of a 20-foot setback and no access except through the mini storage, the value would be about $1.
Well, we'd have to definitely take a look at that, but what we're asking the board to do is to extract the land value out of the $775,000 so that we can actually come up with an entire land value so that we can begin the discussion for the parcel as a whole.
Any other comments or questions for the assessor's office or Mr. Serpa? Now that we have options, there's plenty of things to look at again. So I'll just leave it open for, I'd like to entertain a motion. So when somebody has some ideas.
I would like to ask a question of the assessor. Do we have any ideas of a landlocked property value-wise? I know that we've looked at a couple before.
I'm confused. What portion are you considering landlocked?
So the back property that he has been asking about, to give it some type of value as well?
Well, it's not that it's landlocked. It could be, the storage units could be expanded. He could expand part of that back 54,000 plus square feet could be developed and continue. And the setback could be utilized as an RV storage or to store any type of U-Haul trucks. And I provided an email from the planning department to support that. So he could not use that back. So let's divide that. We'll say improved portion, a portion that could be developed, and then there's the setback portion.
Okay, which is only the
And the
20.
setback portion could be paved and have parking, but it could not have any type of structure. But there is a portion beyond the setback that could in fact be developed. So it's not that it's a separate parcel. It's all one parcel. We've just somehow, it's been now mentally divided into 3 separate sections. And so that's why, but it in fact could be utilized.
Can I make a comment on that?
Go ahead, Mr. Serpa.
The information she may have gotten is not exact. It requires, right now, for us to fence off the back 20 feet. So there's no way we can use the back 20 feet because it has to be fenced separation next to residential. The other point that wasn't brought up, and I'm going to bring it up now, when you're comparing apples to apples with the total piece of property, the front portion of this property, when they widened the road, required, if you see the pictures, the whole front, the buildings are set back about, I don't know, 60 feet, 70 feet. Because when they widened the road, these properties next door and this one were treated as one, and the only access to the office buildings next door had to come off of Fairview through the property we're talking about now, so the first 60, 70 feet could not be built on. Also, a detention basin had to be put on this property that took care of all the drainage all the way down to Mission Linen. So if you're talking apples to apples, this piece of property has a lot of differences than just a bare piece of property or the property next door, which is built right to the property frontage. So you've got a detriment 60 foot deep in the front piece of property you can't use, and you have the 20-foot setback in the back. Anyway, I think I've said enough. I mean, the bottom line is, we talked about it yesterday, and the back piece would be approximately worth $1 a foot. And I know you're going for more information for your books, but the bottom thing we're talking about is if the back piece, which was probably incorrectly done, as you've stated, because it includes the value of the whole property, and that's what you stated yesterday. So I don't want to confuse it anymore.
Thank you for that. Anybody ready to make a motion?
After hearing all the evidence presented to us, I make the motion to, on APN 009-552-03, to leave the land value at $217,800 and leave the improvements at $775,000, leaving a total for the year of $992,800.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, I would say that the motion would die, and so I'd like to entertain another motion.
I have, I guess, some discussion, so I'm just looking at some of these land values and trying to determine a place to go. For that the back portion, the vacant portion, that's 118,919 square feet. I was thinking like a land value of $1 a foot, but that's really low. It's hard to back into that 992,800 number without completely invading it with land value. Are you guys experiencing the same? So I don't quite know, because even if then we valued the front land at $3 a foot, then the improvement value would come out to $586,000, which I feel like is too low.
The reason I made the motion is because of the fact that we didn't have enough time or evidence, appellate evidence, to come up with a figure over and above the state, and our time has run out, and this needs to go to the state board he can have all the evidence at that point to make the determination.
The problem is that the conclusion that the state board drew, that value that they put for the land was just for the vacant land in the back. And the value that they gave it was over $1 a foot, so we would have a bigger problem than what I just went over. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to decide is what to do with that land value.
Any other thoughts on a motion? If we make a motion, can we do any discussion before the second? It has to be motioned and seconded before we can make any comments.
You're at that point now, so if you take a motion and a second, then you can have discussion.
Okay. It just makes it hard when we're looking for a number from the state to overrule the state. I understand Roy's point. And if we do nothing except uphold what the state said, it's still going to be appealed to the state, and they'll have more information and more time to discuss that.
I feel like we just kind of have to do something and then the state can, I guess, fix it.
So we'd be talking about 3 years worth then, right? Last year, this year, and potentially.
That's just this next
It's just for the
year.
current 18-19.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion. So I move that in order to uphold the State Board of Equalization's total taxable value of $992,800 for the parcel located at 1213 Fairview Drive, parcel number 009555203. We place the total taxable land value at $406,415, which is $1 a foot for the rear undeveloped 118,919 square feet, and $3 a foot for the front 95,832 square feet, which places the improvement value at $586,385 for a grand total taxable value of $992,800.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Carson, anything? Anybody? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I hate to muddy things up.
Okay, just
val-
erase what we just discussed.
The state board set a value of the improved parcel at $775,000, so that's what that's got to be. We need to know of that $775,000, how much is land value?
Is it all this? It's all one parcel number, isn't it?
It's all one parcel number, but the board specifically in the transcript said that the improved parcel and the land, the improved parcel portion was $775,000. We can't change that.
So the unimproved portion is stuck at 280 or whatever they.
$217,800.
Is it?
Yeah. Because the improved portion is $775,000. So of that $775,000, we need to know how much of that is attributable to the land and how much is attributable to the improvement.
Okay.
If you so choose to change the value of that 1.25 acres, because the board set a value of $4 per foot, this is your option to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If you're trying to keep,
That's clear as mud.
if you're trying to keep the $992,000 that the board set, that improved amount cannot change.
Okay.
We just have to know how much is towards the land, how much is towards the improvement.
So you have the improvement plus whatever we give the land value to still come up with the $775,000.
Correct.
Because the total taxable value of $992,800. So, okay, so we would only be changing what the value of what the included value of the land of the improved area
Correct.
is.
So in that situation, the land value that we're going to come up with for the improved area that's more accessible will be at a lower rate than the land
Correct.
value of, okay. Do we have the jurisdiction to change that for this year for review?
So that motion that you made, is that what you're asking, whether or not you need to go back? Somebody else needs to make a motion to go back and basically get rid of that motion. So a motion to take back the motion that you did.
Okay, well, I'd like
You
to,
need to try to keep the record as clean as possible.
I would
for
like
appeal.
to have a motion made to retract the previous motion, correct? Is anybody willing to?
Can I retract? I retract my previous motion.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second on the retraction. Any comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. So now I'd like to entertain a new motion.
I will go back to my original motion that the land be valued at $217,800 and the improvements be $775,000 for a total of $992,800 on APN 009-552-03 at 1213 Fairview Drive.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
That's what the state said. We have to divide up the 707. That's a.
Mr. Chair, just let the record reflect that the motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
also, just throwing this out there, you don't have to uphold the 992,000 that the board gave. You can determine a new value if you so choose to.
He has appeal rights.
And he does have appeal rights, so.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Serpa.
I believe what the assessor is asking you for to come up with a land value, because for their books, they have to have a land value and an improvement value. It's not a matter of changing the 775,000 value. It's they want to break down so in their books, they can show the land at X and the buildings at X for depreciation and so forth. Really has nothing to do with as far as what we're talking about at this time. The land value is strictly for his books, but as he said, state's already come up with a 775 value. His tax bill is at the 775 value. The only thing we're questioning is the 54,000 feet in the back. By Denise and Dave's statement, they misunderstood it to be all the land for the 219,000. So I don't know if it's making any more confusion, but you have a 775, which includes lands and buildings. You have 54,000 feet back here, which we've beat to death with the 20-foot easement and so forth. And yesterday, we agreed it was worth about $1 a foot. So it's really correcting the fact that the instructions that they read, and they agreed incorrectly, that the land value was the entire land, not the excess land. Isn't that correct, Denise?
It's correct in the sense that, yes, it should be just for, the value should just be for that back portion of the land. However, it's not a mistake in the sense that we were given no land value by the State Board of Equalization to extract from the 775,000. And, we're not allowed to just pull things out of the air.
So let me try and do this again. So Mr. Serpa is correct. We need to have a value for the land and a value for the improvement that total of $775,000. If you want to keep the back portion at $4 a foot, that's your option. If you want to lower it to 3, 2, 1, that's your option as well. That's what we're asking for, and I believe that's what Mr. Serpa is asking for.
But they don't have to stay at the 775.
that's what the board, if they choose to stay at the board values that the state board gave for the improved portion, then yes, they do.
I have a question. So the figure for the value of the undeveloped land totaling in $217,800, so that is using the back portion at $4 a foot only, not in a whole?
Yes, it's the back portion was valued at $4 a square foot for the 54 plus the 1,000 square feet by the state board.
If we value the land at the front at the same rate, it comes out to a total of $865,000 just for the front portion. So we can't even uphold the same land value that the state gave us.
And we can make that decision if we want to lower the total taxable value, correct? And we can do that, but is that technically overriding the state board, or is that just?
I'm not sure. I mean, this is a new year. This is a value for this coming year, not last year. Okay. The value was set for last year, and so you can do whatever you want for 18-19.
You got you. So that was last year's value with the state's recommendation, and so we're just discussing this year's.
Is there a possibility we could take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Why don't we just all take a 5-minute break? So we'll continue at, 10:05? What time is it? We'll reconvene at 10:07.
Carson City Board of Equalization meeting on February 27th at 10:07 a.m. Now we're back to, would anybody like to entertain a motion? Not quite, okay. Any other questions for the assessor or the appellant?
Are we on the same page about the number of square feet of undeveloped land in the back? What number are you using for the undeveloped?
54,000.
Okay, cool.
It's 54 plus, if I can give you the exact.
54,450.
It's 54,
450.
yep, 450.
So,
Mr. Dolly.
Mr. Chairman, to try and get this going, I mean, the question and the only issue is what the value should be for the back portion. You can either lower the total taxable value and give it lower than the $4 a foot, or you can keep it at the $4 a foot.
Can we give it any kind of obsolescence?
No,
or-
you can't give land obsolescence, you can only
Okay,
give
only on improvements. Okay, that's right.
And that's what we were trying to do with the improved portion, but if the improved portion is throwing everybody, then just forget it. We'll just keep the total value. What we were trying to do was give the building, get the land to the market value, which is what we need to do, and give the improvements obsolescence. But if that's throwing a wrench, then let's not deal with that. If you're intent on keeping what the board value, the state board value was for last year, then the only issue is whether you do anything with the back portion.
So, I just wanted to kind of put on the record, I guess, that when trying to, I guess, back into an improvement value based on the total taxable value provided by the state board, I'm having a really hard time doing so because in order to keep the land value equal with the neighboring properties, that really doesn't leave a lot of room for the improvements. And so I think that the $992,800 is a good market value because trying to back into the improvements from the land is hard.
Okay, any other comments? Like to entertain a motion?
I made a motion.
Yes, you did. You
I
Third time's a
move.
charm.
I move to maintain the state's recommended total taxable value at $992,800 for parcel number 009-55203, placing the value of the undeveloped land in the back at $1 per square foot for a value of $54,450, placing a value on the 160,301 square feet of developed land at $3 a square foot for a value of $480,903, and placing a value on the improvements of $511,897 for that total taxable value of $992,800.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion as it sits? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And Jill. And then Mr. Serpa has until, March 10th to appeal this to the State Board for that decision. So on to item E, agenda item E. For possible action, petition for review of assessed valuation of Tahoe 4 LLC, JS Development Company, JS Devco Limited Partnership, various locations, APNs 005-051-03, 005-051-04, 005-051-05, 005-05109, 005-051-16, 005-05122, 005-05123, 005-05403, 005-05404, 005-05408, and 005-054-11. Mr. Assessor.
Mr. Chairman, you've done a great job of introducing these, so we're not going to repeat all that stuff. But just for clarification, the deadline to appeal at the State Board is 5 o'clock on March 12th, because March 10th is a Saturday this year.
So Monday, March 12th at 5 p.m. is the, okay.
I have a disclosure to make regarding agenda item E. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private capacity, my mother is a partner in the real estate brokerage firm NAI Alliance Carson City. NAI has many real estate listings. NAI may have listings that are in the area of this property and may be affected by our action here today. However, if NAI has listings, they will not be affected any more or any less than any other property in the area. Therefore, because NAI does not stand to benefit any more or any less than anyone else that has any interest in the surrounding area, a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by this, and thus I will participate and vote on this item.
I too have a disclosure to make. I'd like to disclose that I am the beneficiary of a trust that is a partial owner of a membership interest in CC Note Investment Group, LLC, but I am not a trustee or a decision maker in any of the entities. CC Note is an owner of adjacent parcels to Mr. Serpa's parcels.
Any other disclosures on this one? Okay. Guess we go
Ms.
back
Carson,
to,
then you intend to vote on this item? Or are you recusing yourself?
I spoke with my brother about it and our attorney, and they said that it should be okay.
Okay, so can you clarify just the relationship? Do you have a relationship, or it's your brother that has a relationship with Mr. Serpa?
So I'm a part of a trust that owns parcels that are adjacent to Mr. Serpa's.
Okay, so then it's going to affect all the surrounding areas the same as it would anybody else who has an interest in?
Right.
Okay.
so she will be voting?
That's what it sounds like, that she's going to vote on this item.
Okay, that's what your question was to begin with, so I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Serpa, would you like to?
Not really. This is another one of the situations where the bottom line, same thing as the one we just heard. The bottom line is that the benefit to some of the property tax charges or billings are not even close to equal, which in my opinion cost Carson City thousands of dollars because, as I stated in the previous one, they're equal billings dollar-wise. I know they have to go by values and so forth, but in this particular protest here, I protested it last year because of neighboring properties were less than half of properties we owned. Now the assessor has moved the properties of others up 80%, 200%, 300%. The problem being there's a cap rate on the tax bill. This is a problem I believe that the state of Nevada has, whoever makes the rules, that somebody raises the price 300% to make it equal to the other people like myself. Their tax bill is only raised whatever the maximum cap, 8%. So in these, and this is not something you can probably even handle, it might be a legal point or whatever, but if a piece of property next to each other, the actual tax bill per square foot is still less than half of our property, even though our property values that they have now are reasonable, except that I feel a little uncomfortable. I protest because of the lower people values. They raise the lower people's values, but at the same time, rated my property's 40%. For bringing out the fact that these other people are low, we'll now have, when this tax bill comes out for the people that I protested to get equalization, you will have a tax bill per square foot, per acre, whatever you want to say, at twice, my bills will be twice as high, and my values will be much less with my subdivision discount. Does that make any sense to anybody, what I'm saying? In other words, they have properties here valued for $2.70, and they have values of mine for $1.90 because I have a subdivision discount because this property was bought 35 years ago. There has not been a sale on my properties for over 10 years. And they have two sales in the area just happened. One for $3 and something. As I explained to him yesterday, that $3 and something sale through Mr. McFadden has a liability of building a road that will cost several hundred thousands of dollars. So if you say that the property sold for $3.50, but you have to spend $200,000 to put a road in, not the person that bought it, the person that sold it to them. So they didn't get the $350. They got $350 a square foot, less $200,000 worth of improvements they have to put in. Now that I've protested it, take the time to do this to make this equal, and my tax bill will be at least twice what these other people are, regardless of the value, because of the maximum change. They started off below $1 a foot. They went to $3 a foot, but they're only going to be taxed at the old bill of $1 a foot plus maximum 8%. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying? So now, with my time to do this, to break it more equal for Carson City with the different property tax, I now have my properties increased 40% out here. As I talked to Mr. Dolly yesterday, these have a 30% subdivision discount because for 10 years, nothing has happened out there. I requested go back to a 50% discount, which it was at one time when property was sitting there. And the two sales that they have as comparable, which Denise explained to me, she has sales all over the industrial area. This one particular area has been this way, and the two sales that were made, one was where they put a metal mini storage up, and the other one's a lumber yard. The CC&Rs and architectural control on this property, with the exception of this one section, is buildings like Chromoly, the state office buildings, Harley, LSP. The person that wants to put metal storage buildings up, there's only one piece in that area that could do it. So they bought that piece, as far as I'm concerned, just for that one purpose, single purpose. You can't put any of those similar stuff. So I'm not arguing about what they came up with values, but I want it on the record that the way the assessor, if they've had low values before and they raise them up, your tax bill can't get raised to the value. The tax bill will have the value, but the actual dollar cost to that Carson City bills the people can only go up at 8% a year. So when you raise the property because it's too low, 300%, the tax bill doesn't go up 300%. It goes up 8% at the maximum. And I believe Mr. Dolly, they don't even use 8%. Most of them are around 3 or 4%.
4.2% for this.
So what I'm saying is, the bottom line, regardless of how these have changed the values, the tax bill for the people that had low values previous, it's going to carry on even though the values have been changed. So in other words, for instance, I'll use McFadden stuff. I believe McFadden stuff was on the books for like 83 cents a square foot year before, and now it's $3 a foot. But the actual tax bill will be the same at 83 cents plus a maximum of 8 cents. So it'll still be less than $1. So I guess I'm saying may not be the only way to, in my mind, is to roll back my properties to a 50% discount for the subdivision, which we've carried that for. In other words, this whole area was bought where we donated the 100 for the golf course and so forth. So this whole area has been set up to put in the highest end users, like I said, Chromalloy, Harley, and so forth. So if you go back to what the maximum that the assessor can give me is 50%, my bills will still be at least 2 or 3 times as the people per acre or foot. Anyway.
Mr. Serpa, if I
In my
might.
story.
Mr. Serpa, I just wanted to clarify that this board doesn't have the jurisdiction to do anything with the actual property tax bill. All we can equalize is your taxable value, but we, in fact, are discouraged from even discussing the actual property tax
I want to get it on the
bill.
record so somebody will look at it. I know you can only do that, but you do have the opportunity to put a 50% discount on the properties that have not had a sale in 10 years.
Okay. So this board can give a more economic obsolescence than the 30%, or we can keep it at this, as what the assessor has determined. Do we have any questions for the assessor, Mr. Serpa? Denise, your turn.
Denise Jalot, Carson City Assessor's Office. The 11 parcels that are being appealed, they range in size from 1.21 acres to 14.84 acres. The Assessor's Office currently has a taxable price per square foot of similar parcels between $2.70 and $3 a square foot for similar parcels in that market area. The subject's parcels range in value from 95 cents a square foot to $2.10 a square foot due to discounts which include subdivision discounts, unfavorable topography, and lack of buildability, and also the fact that a few are landlocked. The current discounts on these parcels range from 30% to 80%. And so the assessor's office has included a sales comparison chart with recent local vacant land sales that support a price per square foot of $3.22, which is well below, or is well above the assessor's estimate range of $2.70 to $3. I wanted to first talk a little bit about the market approach and the land sales that I utilized, and I wanted to kind of explain, because this has two pieces to this appeal. One is the land value, the price per square foot, and the other is the subdivision discount. And so if we could, for the purpose of the land value, I'd like you to look on page 18 and only focus on the top portion of this chart. The top portion and the $3.22 estimated price per square foot, these are the sales that we utilized, and so that does not in fact include the parcel with that he spoke about with the road. The lower half, which includes that, that parcel, what I added this lower portion for was to support my absorption study, and that's what I will go into next. They're a little bit more recent sales. It shows what I wanted to illustrate is that industrial properties, vacant industrial properties, are moving and they're starting to sell, which so it was just, in fact, in support of my absorption study, not necessarily, it's illustrating where the market's going, but the top portion, the $3.22 per square foot, I would like you to focus. They're the sales that we actually utilized to arrive at values for that market area. As far as the absorption study or the subdivision discount, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit. Mr. Serpa is correct. We can go up to 50%, and if you look on page 13, we can't just assign a percentage discount. It's not our choice. It's not up to our discretion. We have to have support for everything we do, and the way we are instructed to obtain that support for subdivision discounts is through an absorption study. And how we conduct that is through substantial interviews with commercial realtors across not only in Carson City but northern Nevada. And then we also utilize publications, whether it's from NAI or if it's from, I state the sources that we use. We use Kidder Matthews, we use Colliers, Colliers, Kidder Matthews, and NAI Alliance. And I have provided you with quite a bit of information, probably more than you needed, to support or to kind of illustrate the steps that we went to create this absorption study. So right now, the current market probably, and if you look at that, the chart, it's right now, and I provided some emails as well in the study, and I have a lot of support for a 1 to 3 year exposure marketing time, which would support actually a 20% subdivision discount. I do have some support, however, that shows more of a 4 to 6, and it's more of a combination of all sales. Mr. Serpa's parcels are, listed, and they were included in this market absorption study as well. And so I do also, utilizing his parcels, have support for the 4 to 6 years. Therefore, I went in favor of the taxpayer and went with the 30% in lieu of the 20%. He's correct in the fact that we have in the past been able to provide him with the 50%, but it was a different market. And, unfortunately, it's not just based on his parcels alone. It's based on the market as a whole. It's based on northern Nevada as well, with a huge emphasis in the Carson City area. We gather information from all the other county assessors' offices as well to find out kind of what their marketing times are looking at, how many parcels are being, sold within the time frame, if there's been an increase in sales, and everything is supporting, in fact, that there has been an increase in industrial vacant land parcels, and that's what I was supporting with the lower portion of that chart. Let's see. Again, when it comes to tax bills, unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I'm not in disagreement. There's nothing we can do. We were told by the state to completely equalize this market area, and that is exactly what we did. And if you look at page If you look at Exhibit A, there are 2 pages, and that is on 15 and page 16. This is the book and page that Mr. Serpa's parcels are located in. All of his parcels are highlighted in blue, and you can see that we have, we value properties depending on size bracketing. And so obviously, the smaller parcels are going to be a little bit higher price per square foot than the larger parcels. And if you follow the line straight across into the comments, it talks about the discounts that we have provided Mr. Serpa, 50%, for topography and 30% for the subdivision discounts. So we have equalized this entire market area, and then on top of that, once everything was equalized, we provided him with the discounts that he was entitled to, which makes him value-wise much lower price per square foot than the surrounding parcels, but it's rightfully so because per law, he has 10 parcels located in this market area, so he does in fact qualify, whether it's through topography, buildability, or subdivision discounts, he's entitled to those.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Do we have any questions for the assessor's office? Any more questions for the appellant? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Can I make a statement?
Certainly.
I'm only requesting on the subdivision discounts. The other discounts they talk about giving, they're not giving them any discounts. They're valuing the properties as they discussed. The 3 upper pieces up here do not have a road to them. This one's landlocked. There's a pile of rocks from the airport blocking the other ones. That's what those discounts are for. So I'm only referring to the fact that I believe the 50% discount is reasonable. And when you talked about the market in this town for industrial land, I don't know where you think there's any activity. There's a Deer Run Road piece, which my son owns, that was developed in the 70s. He has something like 25 or 30 parcels. In the last 10 years, 2 parcels have been sold like 1-acre pieces. There's another piece of 100 acres, 113 acres, right above Deer Run Road, which is industrial, which we've had 25 different people come. Nobody's buying it. You got stuff on Arrowhead. I don't believe that if you took all the industrial land in Carson City, that in the last 5 years, 5% has changed hands. And that 5% would be excessive because we're trying to do something with industrial land here, and there are no people. There are ones or twosies here and there. We're changing the industrial land above Deer Run Road to residential because it's unsaleable. So again, this has been sitting here for 35 years, no sales in the last 10 years. If that doesn't consider your maximum 50%, I don't have any idea what else it would be.
Well, I have support for sales. I have support through publications. I have support through emails from commercial realtors. That's what I utilized. I also went through LoopNet, and I did the marketing time for all of those parcels. I have substantial support for my absorption study as far as his parcels alone. I can't take just those into consideration because other parcels surrounding him are selling. So I'm not sure where the 5% came from that Mr. Serpa speaks about. I just have the information that I've been privy to, and it's provided if you want to discuss some of the publications or some of the studies, or if you'd like to go over some of these sales, I'm more than willing to. He is correct in the fact that his have sat a little longer. I did make attempts to, because his properties are listed as a multiple parcel listing, and there's not a price disclosed. I made multiple calls to the agent and never received a call back. So I'm not sure, exactly, maybe it's the price, maybe it's the, marketing technique. I can't speak to why his parcels are not selling. We're still not ideal. I mean, if you think logically, 4 to 6 years is is still a substantial marketing time. It's a long time, it's a commitment to list a vacant piece of land and assume you're going to sit on it for that, but there was nothing in my study that would have supported the 50%.
Okay, any further questions for the assessor's office or the appellant?
No, I think she covered the discount on page 11 from the parcels ranging from 95 cents to 210 a square foot, and she's taking into the discounts of the parcels from 30 to 80%. So I think it's covered pretty well right there.
Jill, do you have a comment, or
I don't.
Carson?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I think that there's substantial evidence to support an absorption period of 1 to 3 years, and that 30% discount is a 4 to 6 year period, so I think that that's more than plenty.
Okay, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. In regards to the multiple parcels stated by our chairperson, do I need to list them?
As described on the record is sufficient.
As described on the record. I would like to keep the 30% discount for the subdivision and leave the land values the same.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing no comments, questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing
Is there
none.
2 abstentions?
No.
No? Okay.
Hearing none, motion carries. And before we head on to item F, which looks like there's a lot of things to go through here, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess.
Welcome back to the Carson City Board of Equalization on February 27th at 10:46 a.m. Agenda item F, for possible action, petition for review of assessed valuation of JVRS Enterprises LLC located at 1393 Medical Parkway, APN 007-531-44.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I just want to state that the septic system that we're talking about has been removed. So if you've read that in your records, that's accurate. So we'll just start right off there before the appellant makes his opening statement.
Yes, I did have a call into the state board. I did have a question regarding this case to the state board, in which I don't remember the gentleman that I talked to, but it was answered in the letter. It was Mr. Johnson. I had a general question. I never got an answer, and I never called back.
When was this?
It doesn't interfere with my decision in this case at all.
When was this?
This was last year's case.
Okay, thank you.
So the call was made last year?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, okay. So you haven't had any conversation. Okay, I guess we're going to hear from Mr. Sheldrew or the attorney.
For the record, Norm Azevedo. I'm the attorney here on behalf of JVRS Enterprises. With me is Richard Sheldrew, and so we'll proceed. It's been some years since I've been in front of this board, so just one question on process. Do I get an opportunity for rebuttal? Is there any time limits? Or?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by saying on Friday afternoon, approximately 3 o'clock, we had a meeting with the assessor because this is my belief that factual questions can be answered quite clearly if we sit down and address them. And there was factual errors that are alleged in the writings in your packet from the taxpayer regarding the existence of a septic system, which I believe council just addressed, and also what they call the weighted age of a home. And so we had a meeting with Mr. Dolly, his assistant appraiser Kim, and the attorney to address these topics. And I want to make sure we're on agreement. Leaving that room, it was my understanding that everyone knew that the septic system that was currently being built on 1393 Medical Parkway, and I'll use the street address, was actually situated on the adjacent property at 1365 Medical Parkway. And so that was incorrect. The actual septic tank isn't on 1393. And second, that the weighted age of the home was inaccurate. And so before I begin, I'd like to make sure that that is correct.
Yes, I mean, if I can just clarify. So the septic tank, the septic system was on 13, is it 65? And that was removed prior to our meeting, yes.
And so we're all I just want to make sure we're clear, because that was a big source of contention and has a big issue here.
Can you clarify, is that the vacant piece of property, or is that the one with the?
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
It is.
And the term vacant is, I don't believe that they agree to the use of that term because they believe it's developed. It's the assessor's position that, or improved. It's a position of the assessor that, which you refer to as vacant, whereas the appellant believes that it is improved.
So is the septic system, in actuality, the only thing on the parcel it's located on, or is it on the parcel with the other improvements? If that
Okay,
is more
if
clear.
I may call you to attention to the map that's in the assessor's packet, that'll help a little bit so we can get started on what's where. Then I'll answer your questions. If you look at the two parcels that are designated JVRS Enterprises LLC, the two of those combine to 3.81 acres in total together. There are two homes situate on the one that described would be, as you're looking at it, looking at me on the right-hand side, the larger parcel. There are two homes there. There is a well and there is a septic situate on that parcel. Then, on the parcel immediately to the, I think that would be east. I'm doing it upside down, and I'm an attorney, not a surveyor. That has a septic system, the leach field, all the parts and pieces to it, that until last week was serving the other home on the parcel. That parcel has recently sold, August, September of last year, and we don't call it vacant because it has improvements to it. It had fences, it had this, and it had that residential septic system situate on that parcel. And so, if I answered your question.
So that septic system has been removed when they cleared the land last week and abandoned the septic system.
And we've supplied photographs to the assessor so they can take a look at it, and we'll circulate those if you have them.
So that would decrease the assessed valuation by 13,000? Is that what was the value given to the improvement?
No, it's not 13,000.
Was it
For the record,
it might have been 1,300?
Kimberly Adams with the Carson City Assessor's Office. The septic alone, well, I hesitate to interject because after our meeting on Friday, the septic system that we had included in the packet is the separate septic system. The septic system that needs to be removed is connected to the well. So if we could just have the appellant continue, and then when it's the assessor's turn to discuss the improvements in length that we discussed on Friday,
Okay.
I think it'll be more clear for the board.
Fair enough.
Can we get clarification on that statement about the septic being attached to the well?
I was going to ask the same when I spoke, but go ahead.
If I said the septic was attached to the well, I misspoke. I mean,
We just want to
okay,
make sure the well
let me
isn't
say it this
also
way.
on the other parcel, because
There's a septic system on the first parcel, the 1393 Medical Parkway, that is near the well, within 150 feet. 2 septic systems, 2 houses, 1 well on both parcels. On the big parcel, the one with the 2 houses, there's 2 homes, a septic system and a well. And then on the parcel that you referred to as vacant, we believe has improvements on it, and that's been the subject of dispute for some years now. That septic system is situate on that parcel, irrespective of boundary line adjustment or not. And at the time when these items were constructed, the homes and the septic systems, this was all owned out by the Sheldrew family. So there was not an encroachment either. I mean, technically under the definition of encroachment. But I have a photograph, because there has been excavation recently done on the site, on the 1365 Parkway site. If I may hand these out for the board, take a look at. They've been provided to the assessor. I don't know who to hand them to. May I approach? And from a factual standpoint, typically, the location of a septic system, you go through the Department of Health and they show you approximately where it's at. Because of the facts pertinent here, the buyer of this parcel has performed excavation in anticipation of doing development. And there's a line, the statement, septic, with a line pointing down to a dirt
Original cleanouts.
knob of the septic field, and what that is that's the clean out for the leach line that's on the back side of a septic tank. And just so the record's clear, if there's a septic tank, there's a line that comes in from the home into about a 1,500-gallon tank that has a bath hole in the middle. Solids are kept on one side, fluids go over. Then as the fluids rise, they go into a leach field. The leach field, varying lengths, dependent upon the soils that you're dealing with. That clean out is there facilitating cleaning of it. And so last year, there was an issue as to where the septic system was located. That's about as good as evidence you're going to get because they've undercut about 2 or 3 feet. So it's not located on
The upper part.
1393, which is what the assessor's records shows where it was billed. It's actually on 1365. That was a big factual issue that I hope is now resolved.
And Chairman, that'll be Appellate Exhibit 3.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Was that septic system serving or connected in any way to parcel 1393 Medical Parkway?
Yes. It was
Okay.
connected until last week. It was serving one of the
So-
homes.
So now the septic's gone?
It's, when they abandoned it, I didn't go physically inside.
They collapse it, and but it looks like they're probably going to dig down farther than 3 feet.
They
Okay,
slurry and
thanks.
probably bury the leach field would be my guess, but, it is abandoned, and the assessor during our meeting indicated they're going to give some type of obsolescence because of that, because the home now does not have a functioning sewer system. Okay? The second issue is on the assessor's records was the weighted age of the home. Richard Schilder is here. His grandparents and parents lived on the property, and so it was showing a different age. The actual construction date for the home was in the 1950s. The assessor had a record of the 1940s, and there's a weighted age because there was an addition to the home, and so I believe that issue as well has been resolved. And so I think that's where we sit on that particular issue, and I'll wait, if necessary, address that on rebuttal after the assessor speaks. So the factual issues that were present previously in last year's appeal appear now to have been resolved. And what is of concern to the taxpayer, or the property owner in this instance, or former property owner, is when and prior to the disposition of 1365, that property had its land value increase, which was the subject of your appeal last year, as the assessor considered it vacant. It wasn't vacant. It had the septic system, which is a fundamental portion of the home that is situate on the other parcel. And under NRS 361-768, there's a specific statute that requires that if there is a factual error, and there is no dispute anymore that the septic is no longer situate on 1393, that the taxpayer is afforded relief going back in time 3 years. Ultimately, that process leads us to the Board of Supervisors in the case of Carson City. But now with this factual error, it's present, and we need it ruled on by this particular body. Typically, county boards of equalization look at issues of valuation. Did the taxable value as determined by the assessor potentially exceed the full cash value? That's NRS 361-2275. That appears to be what was being discussed in the previous two hearings before this board. But under NRS 361.3451B, it is the duty of this board to make corrections of any valuation found to be incorrect. And so in this instance, for parcel number, or for the parcel that has the two homes, we need the septic removed. But also because of NRS 361-768 permitting this board to go back 3 years in time, it needs to address parcel 1365 Medical Parkway, because that had its value adjusted as if vacant, land value determined at its highest and best use, which is now commercial, as you all well know, when in fact it was improved land. It was improved land as it had a septic system that was a fundamental aspect of the home on it for, and I'll just shoot a number out there, approximately 45 years. And because of this correction of the factual error, and this is all addressed in the letter that was submitted on behalf of JVRS Enterprises, we are asking for relief under 361-768. If you look at the express language of that statute, it talks about the word use. If there's a factual error as to use. And that's fundamental in front of the board today. Because this body has to look at the question, was the parcel being used as residential with the septic or not? And so the answer to the question from our perspective, absolutely it had the residential use associated with it. Because what's fundamental in that is, if you look to NRS 361-227-1A and 1B, Land is valued differently depending if it's improved or unimproved / vacant. And so now that there's an acknowledgement that the septic has moved for the 2 previous years, the taxpayer needs relief to have that corrected under 768. In this case, this body, in addition to 361, 345, has the authority, and I will respectfully submit the duty to make this correction, as it's fundamental in the determination of this property's taxable value. When I read the assessor's packet, there was a lot of discussion that the taxable value did not exceed the full cash value, which is probably 95% of what you address here. We acknowledge that. The similarity to this situation, to the incline situation, which I'm involved in, have been for the last 15 years, is the same. This board has to make sure that the taxable value was determined correctly. It doesn't matter whether that taxable value exceeded full cash. In fact, our Nevada Supreme Court in the Imperial Palace decision in 1993 came down and said that. And so what we're looking for is that finding that, yes, the septic wasn't here. There is a second proceeding pending in front of the state board, and then beyond, that will address the previous year. But in short, a factual error was made. And if you look at the assessor's records, and they will address this, the parcel 1365 was billed as residential for, I'd say, at least 50 years prior to the change. And there was no intervening change in use. You're going to hear discussions, well, the zoning changed. True. It did. Carson City changed its master plan. The owners went and had the zoning to conform to the master plan. Because it was improved property, the land value is determined consistent to which it's being used. I gave the example of the assessor. My wife and I live on a ranch, 530 acres. Strong likelihood Washoe County is going to change the regional planning designation and go from 1 per 5 to 1 to 2.5. My value won't change because the use of it, we still hay the meadows, we still graze the cows, is the same. This parcel, up until the sale, and I would say at that point did change, was used for residential purposes. And I'll leave this with the final comment. There's no way for a home to be used in any capacity without a septic system. It's probably the most fundamental utility associated with a house. So to make the conclusion that that land was vacant, it disregards the fact that the septic, which we all know now, and you have photographs in the record before you that show where the septic is located, and that's a residential septic. I'll rest at this point.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions before we go to the assessor? Any clarification? All right, Kimberly, you're up.
Thank you, members of the board. Kimberly Adams with the Carson City Assessor's Office. The subject parcel is a 2.33 acre parcel currently being used as multi-residential. As you are aware, we have postponed this case several times in the hopes that we could meet with the appellant and discuss the improvements, the list of improvements that appeared to be incorrect as far as year built. I apologize, I don't have extra copies of the list of improvements. This all happened late yesterday. We were waiting to hear from Mr. and Mrs. Sheldrew in regards to a year built clarification. One of the items listed with our discussion was the removal of a chain link fence that was built approximately in 1963. No dispute of that. We've physically been out there. There's no chain link fence. So we are more than happy to remove the chain link fence. In addition, removing one septic tank. During our discussion, it was clarified that the septic tank involved is connected with the well. It's not the separate septic tank as listed in the packet. So it would have been the septic tank with a year built of 1963. So instead of us assessing it for a well and septic system, it should be corrected for just a well pump system. During our discussions, there were two items that were being assessed with a year built of 1972. That year corresponds to the weighted age given to the structure that those improvements were attached to. Now, prior to Mr. Dolly becoming assessor, the office practice was any improvements involved with the actual structure, if a weighted age was given, would receive the same weighted age as the structure itself. Over the past, several years, the assessor's office has been in the process of correcting those weighted ages so that if you had a fence or concrete or patio cover that was constructed prior to or after, that year built would be corrected to that year. Instead of it having a weighted age of, say, 2010, of when you did an addition onto your property. So we agreed that those two improvements, the remaining concrete flatwork, the remaining septic tank, should be corrected to 1950. We have no disagreement with that. Now, as far as the weighted age of the house located northwest, on the northwest side of the parcel, our records indicated that it was constructed in 1945. Now, I can tell you, based on looking through appraisal files, back then a lot of the year builts were probably estimated. We didn't have computerized permits, so forth and so on. We don't even have records going back to 1945. There was an addition done. The property was given a weighted age of 1972. Mr. and Mrs. Sheldrew indicated that it should actually be 1950. So we can adjust that year built. It would change the weighted age from 1972 to 1970. Minor corrections, no big deal. We have no, again, disagreement with any of that. Now that the septic tank has been removed, as presented in your packet, the assessor's office recommends applying an 8% curable functional obsolescence to that residence that would have to be reviewed each year. Obviously, if next year he connects to city sewer, that curable obsolescence will need to be removed. As far as the septic system and the placement of the septic system, there was that boundary line adjustment that was done. Now, whether or not prior to the boundary line adjustment that septic system was within, I'll use the address, 1393 Medical Parkway or not, I would say, who knows? Who knows? At that point, before the boundary line adjustment, nobody really knows, as far as our office is concerned, where that septic system was located. I would remind the board that the appellant has applied for the evaluation to be reviewed for 1393 Medical Parkway. The assessor's office has known that that septic system was going to be removed within this year. Even if the appellant hadn't had other questions regarding improvements, we were going to remove that septic system. And it would have been done prior to him receiving a tax bill. We do that all the time. We get permits, we go out there, we inspect. We would have been removing that septic system regardless. As far as the vacant land, or in their opinion, the improved land, that parcel is not being appealed in front of you today. That was presented to you last year, went before the state board. And as far as the discussion of if it's a vacant or improved parcel, we're not hearing that today. They're appealing the factual errors on the current parcel and not the discussion as far as the parcel that's adjacent that they sold. So it is our recommendation to make the other adjustments to the parcel, adjust the weighted age to from 1972 to 1970. And this morning we were asked if we could go back 3 years for those improvements. The septic tank was just removed, so going back 3 years, I don't feel would warrant that adjustment. As far as the chain link fence, I would need clarification on when that chain link fence was removed. I can go back and we can look at pictometry to see if we could visibly see when the chain link fence was removed. As far as the weighted age, we have no problem adjusting those going back 3 years. The curable obsolescence, obviously, that just happened, so that wouldn't warrant going back 3 years for that. And I'm open for any discussion.
Okay, any comments or questions for the assessor? Okay, we'll go back to the appellant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Norm Azevedo. I'll call your attention, this is in the assessor's packet, this map that my client had put together, survey map. Aside from having the photographs of where it's situate, which I'll submit, in all my years of doing this kind of work, I've never had the opportunity to have a parcel partially excavated to show a septic system to prove its actual location. That's a rare set of facts. But prior to that, they did prepare this map, have a surveyor prepare this map, and I'll do my best to describe it. It shows the location of that septic tank. It says abandoned septic tank.
Just for the record, that's page 26 in the packet.
Page 26, and it shows that it was always on, let me make sure I say it correctly, 1365 Medical Parkway. To suggest that it's not a factual error, it was billed on 1393. It's only recently abandoned, okay? It is clearly an error. We are here today, and the petition in front of you was filled out with regard to 1393 Medical Parkway, the property with the 2 homes. We couldn't, in good conscience, add 1365 Medical Parkway to the petition because they don't own it anymore. And it'd be improper for someone else to be petitioning someone else's property. But NRS 367768 is clear. You have the ability to go back in time. These 2 parcels were 1 unit. When his family lived there, we have 3 parcels on our ranch. I cross a parcel line, don't even know it. Okay, they put the home over here and the parcel extended. Okay, so the provision for 1365 is fundamental to the issues before the board. We can't talk about the septic tank located over there when it actually was part of the home. If that makes any sense. The definition of vacant land, and let's get into this. For 50 years, the assessor billed my clients and their predecessors and interest, parents and grandfathers, for the septic tank. That's an acknowledgement, that's an improvement. When you put an improvement on land, it becomes improved land. There is no definition that, well, okay, Mr. Azevedo, you have meadows and they have all the infrastructure for irrigation, but that's still vacant. With all due respect, it's improved. Agricultural improved, but improved. In this instance, the assessor, for almost 50 years, acknowledged it was a residential parcel. It was improved because it had the septic system, which was fundamental. The change in zoning, if you look at the law, under 361, 227, 1A and 1B, it's improved. The fact that the zoning change has absolutely no bearing on its valuation. It has to be valued consistent to which the improvements are being put. That's verbatim out of the statute. An improved parcel, and there's no rulings from the state, there's no Supreme Court decisions, because it's never been challenged to this degree. Assessors have always acknowledged that if you have a home, and maybe the barn's on the other side, they're both improved. I mean, it's pretty fundamental to our system of taxation. But 1365, 1393, in the years that are before the board, under 361, 768, were always used as residential property. That's what you use a residential septic for. And the home that's situate on 1393 couldn't have been used without the septic system. Carson City wouldn't permit it. And so when you get to the statute, it is before this body. It was before the body last year, and you had this discussion earlier. Every tax year is a new case. And so if we wouldn't come here, then they'd say, oh, you're denied relief because you didn't come for this current year. But because of the nature of the errors that were made, and I'm not throwing rocks at Mr. Dolly or his office or his predecessor, Kit Weaver, in the mass appraisal system, these guys do the best they can, and they're correct. They get the building permits, they go out and take a look, and they do what they can do, but they're valuing lots and lots of parcels, as opposed to a fee appraiser that values only the parcels people pay him to value. I've dealt with hundreds of these factual error cases in Washoe and Clark County. This is not unusual. It's certainly not unusual for this board to consider it, but it's fundamentally correct and within your authority under 361-345. All of this scheme tucks under the Nevada Constitution at Article 10, Section 1 that requires a uniform equal rate of assessment. It's inappropriate for this taxpayer to have an improved parcel considered vacant only to have the valuation increased as if vacant. And that's where they sit. The changes they've agreed to, that's great. We're moving in the right direction. At least we don't have factual disputes anymore. But what you didn't hear out of the assessor was, yeah, we acknowledge that septic system is located at 1365. Okay? And all I can tell you as an attorney before this board, the only evidence you have in your possession supports the conclusion that it is situated on 1365. You have a surveyor's map, you have photographs, and so what we're looking for is the factual errors to the extent they derive a refund, that they be ordered, and for 1365 an acknowledgement that the septic system is there, fundamental part of your decision, and that we get the relief contemplated under 361-768 with the understanding that we acknowledge and know that under that statute, ultimately it has to go in front of the Board of Supervisors. Same in Washoe County, same in Clark County. Thank you.
I got a question. I'm really confused. I hear that there's no septic service or that it's been excavated or it's not there, it's no longer functioning, it's no longer hooked up, but then again, we keep going back to there's a septic service there. I'm getting kind of confused that 1365 no longer has a septic tank on it, but we're talking about a septic tank on 1365 which is not on it. What am I missing?
Let me be more clear. The septic tank on 1365 sat and was functional until about a week ago. Okay, the new owners of 1365 came in. They're preparing to develop some kind of big medical facility. Done a lot of research on it, so I don't know. The excavation occurred as a result of that. There was an agreement that they could use the septic tank until they got to a certain point. It was abandoned. Carson City came out and went through its function of abandoning it. I always thought it was filling it with slurry, but if they crushed it in and knocked it down, whatever they did, they did. And so through last week, which would be February of 2018 for the record, there was a system there. And they're offering the 8% obsolescence because it no longer is there.
So I have a question. So basically what we would be looking at would be changing the land use code for 1365 for previous years. But my question is more, for one, that property wasn't listed on the original appeal. So does this board even have the jurisdiction to talk about that? And for two, given that you aren't the current owner, is that even something that would be possible?
The 1365, as far back as I could go, looking at old tax rolls, I went back as far back as I could, has always been assessed as a vacant parcel. The Sheldrews, his family, would have always received an assessment notice that would indicate only a land value. It was never assessed as an improved parcel. It's always been vacant residential. Up until the zoning change occurred, which actually happened in 2011. The assessor's office corrected our records later for, correct me if I'm wrong, 2016, 17?
Correct.
And then it was changed to commercial. I think if I could interject for the appellant, what they're hoping is the recognition of where the septic tank is located thereby allows you, as the County Board of Equalization, to correct the record for 1365 when they owned it, to place the septic then on that parcel and keep it as residential. However, that item went before you last year, and you upheld the assessor's recommendation. It was then appealed to the state board. They upheld the assessor's recommendation. So from here, I don't know how, and Adriana can correct me, that you can undo what was already determined last year. I think that would have to either go before the Board of Supervisors, and they could look at that, or...
The reason being that we now have a land survey. That's the difference. We didn't know where it was last year.
Right, and I think that's been established, and I think that's what Mr. Acevedo is trying to establish here, is that you're recognizing that there was a septic system on 1365, and he's asking for the factual error to be corrected going back 3 years. I believe that's what he's asking for. And so what Kimberly is saying is that you can't go back and hear that case that you heard a year ago, but it's intertwined. So it's a careful consideration because it's all related. However, what we're here for is to determine the assessment on 1393 and how the septic relates to that. And but also, Mr. Acevedo is asking for a factual correction on the septic to go so that he can go before the Board of Supervisors to correct that record.
Right. So what I'm asking is, are we even at liberty to make any factual corrections given that that property wasn't appealed? We don't have 1365 as an appeal.
May I respond? We're certainly not asking for you to make a finding for any time we don't own the property. Let me answer your questions directly. For the periods of time that predate where we sit today, our appeal, as I tried to explain earlier, and I'll say it again, in the petition addressed solely 1393 because we own 1393 and because the septic at the time the petition was filed was attached to 1393 and functioning. Those facts have changed, okay? As to 1365, for the prior year's an issue, my opinion, this board absolutely has jurisdiction because the Shoulders were the then owner. 361, 768 is clear, 3 years going back. And I'll actually get in a little bit more. My background, I was with the State Attorney General's office. I sat as State Board Counsel, so I'm fairly familiar with what your rules are. Typically, this board is convened for the year which it sits, 1819. I get that. But in tax cases, there's always the exception to the rule, and you get a weird set of facts, like I would say this is, then you get into different areas. And from a due process standpoint, it has always been my experience in the 2 counties in which I've dealt with this issue that the boards make these findings. We acknowledge you can't give a refund. You can't deal with tax bills, but you are the fact finders. Someone has to make that finding a fact. Did the septic, does it exist? Am I correct? Is the survey correct? I mean, did it exist on 1365? From there, the process will roll forward. So that's our perspective on the issue.
So, I'm not very good at some of this. The zoning got changed in 2005-ish, and
2011.
it was 11. And then the assessor started valuing that as commercial property based on the zoning change. But it was still being used as a residence, but now it's being sold for commercial prices. I get confused because you want it to be taxed as a residence because that's what it was before the zoning, but the zoning changed and it wasn't petitioned to stay out of that zoning to keep it SF whatever, 1,000, whatever it might have been. And so the zoning got changed to commercial, but I'm just confused.
If I can explain. The law is clear. Clearly, when the property was sold and the new owners come on and they're going to build this giant behemoth medical facility, it's commercial. But in 1981, we went away from a market value system to the tax shift. And it's also part of the cap. We skip that for right now. It's not really relevant. They wanted to make sure that people that were in their homes were protected from wild increases. And so 361-227-1, or A, 1 and 2, were changed to recognize that zoning changes occur. In fact, happen all the time with the growth the regions are having up here. It's pretty commonplace. But if you're home and you're an older senior citizen, you can use, I'm not sure I'm a senior citizen yet, but my wife and I as an example, they rezone our property and it value quadruples because of the rezoning, as long as my use hasn't changed. They don't look to zoning if it's improved. Am I still using it to run the cows, hay the meadows? So to answer your question, it should have never been increased. Carson City made a master plan change to address the properties around the hospital. And when the master plan change occurs, in my other life I also do land use planning, property owners typically come in, because master planning's here, the zoning's here, going from broad brush to more detailed, they bring their zoning into conformance with the master plan. That's what they did. But the use didn't change. It was still being used as residential property. And so what we're saying is this: it should have never changed until it was sold. Because at that point, it is no longer being used as residential. The new owners came on, they've got building permits, they're doing all their commercial aspects. If you start changing property values based on change in zonings, first of all, that's, from a legal perspective, absolutely incorrect under 361-227-1A2, I believe it is. That's not what's supposed to happen.
But isn't that what has happened?
That's our complaint, that's why we're sitting here. I mean, seriously, I mean...
Well, and I get that, and I understand Governor List wanting to change his tax basis from property tax to sales tax, which really kind of got us in 2008. It's the septic tank from last year, we knew where the septic tank was. It was the same map. I'm sure on the condition of sale to another owner.
No, sir. I had to interrupt you. No, sir.
We only had photos last year. We didn't have an official land survey. That was the turning
Okay,
point.
so we didn't have the official land survey, but we could tell by landmarks and things like that. But in any event, we may not have known that it was there, but it was a condition of sale, that full disclosure, they knew that they were buying a piece of property that they were going to develop as commercial, and there was a septic tank on it, or a septic field, or some sort of improvement that was connected to 1393. So yeah, we didn't have the survey map, but it was, I think the survey map shows what everybody believed to what they thought was there. Why don't we go with, somebody have some more questions?
Well, he had the property listed at 3.3 acres, but he had it listed as two separate parcels. And the second parcel that we're discussing was vacant land because we weren't aware of the septic tank being there because you couldn't see it. So he sold the vacant parcel. And to me, the septic tank that is in fact an encroachment on that piece of property, because you can't see it, you didn't know it existed, and it was listed as a separate parcel for sale.
If I may ask the assessor, I know that there is a verbiage that we've talked about before for highest and best use, and I think that that's probably kind of where there might be some type of question. So when they changed the zoning, they changed it to a more expensive zone, commercial, and so now we're at highest and best use would be commercial. So if you're going to change your zoning, you're going to pay the higher amount. That's what I understand.
And if I may, I mean, this is probably, I guess what I'm saying is, under our taxable value system, and I'll be very direct, if you look at 361-2271, which talks about how to value land, and it differentiates between improved and unimproved, what's really telling to me is, it doesn't have the words highest and best use. It says if it's improved, you value it consistently to which the improvements are being put. That's verbatim. So if you have a home, and I'll use the best example, on the Las Vegas Strip, surrounded by casinos, it's all zoned gaming. It's valued as a home. The zoning of the land is irrelevant for purposes of determining that value. The minute whoever, MGM or Circus, whomever it is, I'm showing my age here, comes in and buys that home and scrapes it clean and adds on to the casino, that's a new day. Vacant land under 361-227 is valued to basically the best of which the land can, I'm not paraphrasing it correctly and I don't have it in front of me, but it's, in fact, do you have that, does anyone have 361 in the room?
I have it right now. I can read it verbatim.
Yeah, that'd be great, if you go to the one for vacant land.
Go to the one for vacant land. Give me a number, Norm. I know you know.
361-2271.
A, B. Okay. Full cash value of 1A1, vacant land is considered the uses to which it may lawfully be put. Any legal or physical restrictions upon those uses, the character of the terrain and the uses of other land in the vicinity. Or 2, improved land consistent with the use for which the improvements are being put.
So the term highest and best use, it's not in our law. And it was specifically not put there for improved land because they didn't want to be taxing people out of their homes. When Carson City changed its master plan, you can participate in that process as a landowner. Unless there's a whole bunch of you landowners, chances are you're not turning the horse real quick. And they can change your zoning, which, if we go down this path, in short, would tax you out of your house. Forget the cap wasn't in place at the time, and that's all new law. So when you're looking at improved, because what happened was the assessor, and I'm not saying it was ill-motived or attributing any bad motive there, said, no, this is vacant, because when you went out and looked at it, a septic system typically, if you're lucky, you can find the 2 lids, okay, if you're lucky. It would, to the eye, look vacant. But in fact, that tank was on the other side, which means, from our perspective, and there's a definition in the law of improved land, it's improved. It was fundamental to the operation of that house. I would submit to anybody in this room, and what I told the assessor was, including my wife, no one's going to live in a house without the septic field. It's fundamental. You can probably get out with the electricity, maybe natural gas. I'd say fresh water. The fresh water and the wastewater are most fundamental. That parcel was improved. It had an improvement on it, which was billed to it. And the assessor, he says he billed it as vacant, but residential vacant. That's a factual error. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. If you have improvements on land, it's no longer vacant, it's improved. I mean, it's pretty basic.
I have a question. I remember from last year, we were discussing, one of the NAC numbers goes over if one parcel is being used to support another parcel. And I don't see that in this packet. Is there a way to look that up?
Actually, NRS 361-227-2A is what they're claiming. And what it says is the location of the improvements cause 2 or more parcels to function as a single parcel. Now, oh, sorry. Arian?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
So when you're looking at that land survey and you're looking at the pictures are of the current boundary line. That's not of what it was back, before when this was heard last year. So, we've always claimed that the septic was on 2 parcels. And so we're not going to split the cost of that septic between the 2 parcels. We just don't do that. So we use it, and we did it. We kept taxing it, or we kept assessing it to the parcel which the properties were. And that's been done that way since 1963, and there was never an issue until we found the value or the rezoning in 2015. And that's why this is now an issue. I asked Mr. Azevedo last week, I said, so if you have, and let me get back to, when you're looking at the land survey, it shows a little square. Well, that's not a true reference of the size of the septic because it's huge. You've got the leach fields, you've got, lines to the leach field, you got the septic tank, and you got the line from the house to the septic. And so, I kind of lost my train of thought, sorry.
You asked Norm.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I asked Mr. Azevedo, so if you have 6 feet of the septic or the leach lines on this property, or 60 feet, is that an improvement? He said yes, he believed it was. When we went to the state board last year, whether you call it an encroachment, which I guess legally it can't be because an encroachment is only when you have 2 owners of different properties. This parcel or this septic was on both parcels. Nobody's disputing that, we understand that, but we only tax it to the parcel for which it's been taxed for the last 50 plus years. The issue that I'm kind of struggling with now is the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Sheldrew are saying that the property itself has been over-assessed and they want to go back 3 years on the septic. Well, then that means that the property, if you decide that the property on the east side, that property would have been under-assessed because then there would have been no septic on that for the last 3 years. So I guess those are kind of my struggles.
May I respond? Oh, I'm sorry.
On page 56, under conclusions of law by the state board, they state that the septic tank is an encroachment on the subject property and not an improvement such that the subject property should be taxed as residential property. That's per the state, so where do we go from there?
Mr. Chair, may I? If I may respond to Member Simmons' comments. First of all, there's a lot of new facts this year from last year. The state board didn't have the benefit of what we've been talking about in the photographs. And I will say as a matter of law, the state board's wrong. It's not an encroachment. Even under black letter, it never was an encroachment. And then to get to the next point, it was raised in the previous appeal, every year is anew. And the state board rendered a decision. There's a process that will follow from that. But this year, and 361-768 contemplates going back. And the NAC, the regulations that the state adopts, are helpful in this regard because it defines 2 things. One, improved land, and the definition, I'll read it verbatim, means land on which there are any improvements sufficient to allow the identification or establishment of the current actual use. In our case, we have a septic tank, a residential septic tank, because if you get into that world, it's not a commercial septic tank, it's a residential. They have different size tanks, different size leach fields, and different costs. Then the NAC goes on further to define improvement. Means any building, fixture, or other structure erected upon or affixed to the land, including without limitation, any of those improvements listed in paragraph A and B of subsection 1 of 361.035, and they specifically include, which is very broad, and the reason that definition is very, very broad is because the assessor wants the ability to tax all improvements. The term does not include any land enhancements. So if you put trees on and doll it up and make it look kind of nice, that's not deemed to be an improvement. But the question for the board is it a structure erected upon or affixed to the land? Clearly, a septic system is about as fixed as you're going to get.
All
When it
right,
goes in,
last
it's not
year when
coming
we
out.
heard this, the parcels were up for sale as commercial property.
Yes, sir.
They were not up for sale as residential property. The subject property that the septic tank is encroached on was listed as a separate parcel as commercial, as is where the house is sitting, correct? How can you rob Peter to pay Paul when you're trying to sell a piece of commercial property and try to keep it taxed as residential property? Because he did sell it as commercial.
Well,
And the septic tank, you can't see. And looking at the lot line on page 26, it says abandoned septic tank.
okay, and if I may, the land was sold. The zoning of the land is deemed commercial, okay? It wasn't a commercial property. It had been and was, through the listing, used as residential property. So we're not robbing to Peter to pay Paul. What we're acknowledging is that the current use, as contemplated under 361-227, is residential. Has to be taxed as that. We're applying the tax rules, applying the statutes and the regulations, and as I said previously, the minute it sells to the third party who's going to use it for that commercial use, well, that's Katie bar the door. They paid $900,000 or whatever the number was for the land value. They're pretty much set the land value for the assessor. He may have other sales, but that changed at that point. And that was the purpose under 361-227 in 1981, was to keep the property the same, irrespective of zoning changes, master plan changes, regional land plan changes, until such time as the use changes. And the use did not change on the second parcel until it was sold, and technically, if you really want to get into it, last week, and the septic was abandoned. Because that septic was functional actually until last week. And it was a residential septic.
But the parcel was sold as commercial.
It was a parcel sold that was zoned commercial.
And it was advertised as commercial property.
Absolutely, it was probably advertised as being carrying
And
a
it was
commercial
blank
designation.
property.
But that doesn't, I'll be maybe polite, with all due respect, that doesn't change the tax laws. And that's what, okay, okay.
Let me ask a question of the assessor. So the assessed valuation of this thing that we didn't know where it was and it's gone now would be about $4,900. Is that what the decrease in valuation, what would the decrease in valuation be if there was never a septic tank on any property? If there was never any second septic tank in discussion here?
Could I make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
You want me to?
Yeah,
Do that?
Kim's going to do it.
Hold on, I just messed up all my papers. Hold on, okay. I think what the assessor's office would recommend is in regards to 1365, whether it was considered improved or vacant, whether the factual error of the septic tank and the placement thereof. Under 361-768, and I'm going to read it because I didn't make copies. We were scrambling this morning. If an overassessment of real or personal property appears upon the secured tax roll of any county because of a factual error concerning its existence, size, quality, age, use, or zoning, or legal or physical restrictions on its use within 3 years after the end of the fiscal year for which the assessment was made, the county assessor shall make a report thereof to the Board of County Commissioners. My recommendation to the board today is to, under your guidance, recommend to us to take the opinion of whether it was vacant or improved and the placement of the septic tank to the Board of Supervisors, and they can rule whether or not that factual error was correct, or if we should have maintained that parcel as vacant residential until such time that it was sold, or if they will instead uphold your ruling from last year and the state board's ruling from last year. And then we can proceed to the corrections that need to be made for 1393 Medical Parkway, determine which improvements you feel we can go back 3 years as far as the year built, and then we can leave the rest up to the Board of Supervisors.
I sort of have comments and maybe some recommendations. I think that in light of the land survey that was performed between last year's meeting and today, I think that it's undeniable that the now abandoned septic tank has always been on that parcel, 1365. And I think that we should recommend the assessor take this to the Board of Supervisors, because I think that because the septic tank was there, the two parcels were operating as one, and that 1365 should be changed, its usage should be changed for the past 3 fiscal years to reflect that it was being used as a residential parcel.
Is that a motion?
That's my recommendation, and I was just kind of, should I make that a motion? I can.
If I could just clarify, the
Yes.
correction would only be for 14 months when the change happened. So it would be for.
The septic would be for 3 years.
The septic would be for 3 years. Well, whether it was assessed on, it's the same assessed value, whether it was assessed on 1365 or 1393, it's the same assessed value.
It's the land use, though, that is
It's the land
concern.
use code, so it's the land value
Right.
issue, and that would only go back from 16, 17, 17, 18, up until the time the property was sold.
Right.
So it wouldn't be.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head when the property was sold?
August 2017.
August, okay.
Can I ask then, at that point, what about the septic? Because we have to tax, we can't not have a septic not taxed. So how do we do that?
Right, and and that would be sort of my quandary is, can we change the land use code for 1365 if the septic is not on that property? Can we say that they're functioning as, because you're right, you have to put the improvement on one or the other, right? And the fact that we have to decide which does it go on is illustrative of the fact that they're functioning as one parcel. If it's on the other parcel, then can we say that 1365 was residential, or does it have to have that definitive residential improvement?
Once the property was sold, it would then be considered.
I'm talking about before it was sold. The land use prior to the sale.
Well, is their opinion that it should have been maintained as residential?
So
Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
If we change the land use for the last 3 fiscal years to a residential use, but if we keep the septic on the other for taxation purposes, then is it justifiable to say that the use is residential even if that improvement is listed on the other property?
That's the quandary in a nutshell right there.
But the fact that there is that quandary is like, okay, their functioning is the same, if it has to be on one, because if the septic was listed on the property where it actually existed, then how would that affect? That's what I'm saying.
And I think that's where the Board of Supervisors would make that determination.
Okay.
If they feel that there is an error, that the land value should have been maintained as vacant residential or residential, then we can go back on their direction to 1617 and then a portion of 1718.
Okay.
And adjust that tax bill. It would then be forwarded to the Treasurer's Office to adjust that tax bill.
Okay,
Does that?
that does. Can I make a motion? All right.
No, it would only be for the 1365. The assessed valuation for 1393 land value, if I'm understanding, there's no issue. No issue. Okay.
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 Someone like to make a motion?
I move to recommend to the assessor's office to seek recommendation from the Board of Supervisors as to how to go about changing the land use of 1365 Medical Parkway, also known as parcel number 007-53105, to a residential usage based on the fact that it's being used as one parcel with the neighboring parcel for the fiscal year 2016 and 2017, and a portion of the fiscal year 2017-2018 until August 2017.
We have a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
If I could just clarify for the record, the 1365 Medical Parkway, the current parcel number is 007-53145.
Okay, so discussion on the motion, I would like to amend and say that the parcel number should be corrected to 007-53145.
Still a second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
And now in regards to the improvements for the appellant's subject parcel. Okay.
All right, well, we're not done. Okay.
We need to address the
Darn it.
improvements.
We need to address-
Which improvements do you want us, are we going back 3 years? We need clarification on the chain link fence, so forth.
Can we revisit what improvements we're talking about now that we've got this, now that we've done something about the septic tank?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. We can help. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Shelder.
Mr. Chairman, Rich Sheldrew, General Manager of JVR Enterprises. Don't worry about the chain link fence. It might have been 30 feet. What is it, $13?
We still want our records to be correct.
Okay.
So if it
Oh,
needs to be
I
removed.
agree.
we-
Okay.
So we're good with removing that for 1 year?
Okay.
Perfect.
So what improvements does that leave us to?
So the chain link fence would be removed for the 18-19 year. The removal of the septic tank that was attached to the well that was built in 1963, that would be effective for the 18-19 year. Correcting the year build on the remaining concrete flatwork from 1972 to 1950. Correcting the year build of the remaining septic tank from 1972 to 1950. And then correcting the original year built to the northwest house, whose square footage is 1,224 square feet.
44. 44 square feet?
1,224.
Oh, okay. That's 44.
From 1972 to 1970. Now, those last three improvements, the concrete flatwork, the last two of those improvements, the concrete flatwork and the effective age of the house, do you want us going back 3 years on those two items? Because the removal of the septic tank just happened, and then the curable obsolescence just happened. So those two things should only be applicable to 18-19.
And I didn't hear the applying the 8% curable functional obsolescence to the house for 18-19 because of the removal of the septic.
That too.
Okay, so we need a motion to retract the last approval and start?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay, all right. We do, things change up in here every once in a while.
We're keeping you on
But-
your toes.
Absolutely.
If you're ready to entertain them.
I would like to entertain another motion.
I would like to approve the miscellaneous changes as previously stated for the record by Kimberly Adams for, let's see, what is that, for parcel number 007-53106, no, that's the
44.
old. It's 44, 007-531-44, as previously stated. For the 18-19 year for the ones stated, and then for going back 3 years for the others that were stated to go back 3 years.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, so
Discussion.
just for clarification. Okay, for the septic, the removal of the septic, and for the 8% functional obsolescence, and for the removal of the chain link, that is going to be for 18-19. For the concrete flat with the change of the effective age from 1972 to 1950 for the concrete,
The remaining septic,
the remaining septic system from 1972 to 1950 as well, and then the effective age of the northwest home from 1972 to 1970, we will go back 3 years for that.
Yes.
And then the rest will be,
All 1 year separate.
right.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, and clarification. Are there any other comments on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you again.
Thank you, have a great day. Thanks for keeping us on our toes. Okay, so.
5 minutes.
You need a 5-minute break? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at, what is it,
Break for lunch.
12 o'clock. Carson City Board of Equalization on February 27th at, 12:07 PM. And we're going to swear in Mr. Myers from Myers Family Trust. Okay, Adriana?
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Scott, were you able to?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Scott, we'll go to you for your appeal, and then we'll go to the assessor's office. If you would start, please.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly how this process works, so if you could let me know. Basically, do you mean just tell you our side of the story?
Hey, Scott, real quick, this is Dave again. Could you please introduce yourself and first and last name? And yes, the process is very similar to court, so you will have time to discuss why you're appealing the value of the property, and then the assessor's office will have it, and then you will have time to rebut that.
Okay. My name is Scott Baumgardner, Baumgardner. I work for Blackstone Development Group, Josh Myers, who is the owner of the property with Myers Family Exempt Trust. We were appealing the valuation based on many constraints on the 4-acre parcel that have to do with the current restrictions and conditions imposed on the project by the Lumber Ranch North specific plan, the conditions of approval for TSM-17-005, the phasing plan, which was going to be incorporated as Chapter 4 of the SPA, and that was the documentation that was provided. The project had easements, drainage easements that were recorded upon closing when Josh purchased the property that encompassed approximately 39,402 square feet of land. The project has conditions where these channels must be built before the first permit is pulled on any of the Lumber Ranch property, the 203 acres on the west side of the freeway. The project cannot obtain the permit until the Clomer has been approved for the project. Those are all conditions of approval in the TSM-17-005. Basically what we're having to do is capture all the runoff, the flooding coming down from the mountains and floods the 5th and Solomon intersection. There's approximately 1,100 CFS, cubic feet per second of water right there at the corner of Solomon and 5th that has to go into a drainage channel that's approximately 74 feet wide, and that's the reason for the loss of the land. Also, so to enter that project, you're going to have a clear span bridge is conditioned by Carson City to enter that project off of 5th Street. There will also be a 25-foot wide channel along Solomon. That one will be a low-flow channel, so we could probably just pipe underneath the pavement for that one. There's a lot of conditions that don't allow us to, and conditions that when someone comes to look to buy this property, people would say, okay, well, this is additional over and above that property right across the street that I have to build on this project before I can actually, install a commercial building. Let's see. Yeah, so that basically we're looking at what loss of land, the additional improvements to the project over and above a comparable project, and 5th Street not having an access off of the freeway. So when you look at it comparable to projects off of Carson Street or Williams, things like that, the amount of traffic flow that will come off of there. Let me see. We understand that, having to build a a right-of-way, a right turn lane on Fifth Street. That's standard, construction. But we do have to build that for the entire length of the 400 feet of the project. So that we didn't, we looked at that as normal. Yeah, the property is currently in the floodplain. The COMAR has been submitted to FEMA. So once the channels are built, and these channels run from Solomon to the freeway. So there's 4 channels, one along the entire length of Solomon from the high school or from the Mormon church down to 5th. There's Kings Canyon that runs from 5th Street all along from Solomon to the freeway. One along Robinson Street that runs from Solomon to the freeway, and then one at the high school called Vicey Canyon that runs from the east end of the high school all the way to the freeway. So all 4 of these channels have to be constructed, and we have to participate in the cost of all 4 of these channels so the lumber ranch can be taken out of the floodplain. So
This one?
Josh, do you have anything to add?
Not at all.
Yeah, do I need to introduce myself, or can I just speak freely?
Okay, go ahead.
This is Joshua Myers, MYERS, Myers Family Irrevocable Trust. Without going into any more detail than Scott went into, the property is currently in the floodplain. Extensive amounts of money are required to bring it out of the floodplain, and as long as the comparables that Carson City is using are in the floodplain and comparable properties, then we would be fine with their valuation, but I don't believe that they are. So I just wanted to, state that the biggest issue is properties in the floodplain and millions of dollars to bring it out. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Scott, do you have any other further comments before I turn it over to the assessor?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay, now we'll turn this over to the assessor for their evidence.
Just real quick, we're going to identify the parcel first because that was not identified to begin with. So, and then we'll go into our info if that's okay.
Certainly. It's for petition for review of assessed valuation of, for petition for review of assessed valuation of Myers Family Exempt Trust, Joshua Myers trustee, South Solomon Road and 5th Street, APN 010-041-16, for the record.
Thanks, Jed. Jeremy Sapoznik, property appraiser with the Carson City Assessor's Office. So this parcel has some flood control issues that are required to be completed prior to the beginning of the development. At the back of the packet, page 137, is a picture of the flood channels that we're addressing. These 2 channels are the Solomon Channel and the Kings Canyon Channel, and these 2 channels have a direct impact on the size of the subject parcel. So, due to document 474-720, the assessor's office has determined that subtracting the 39,402 square feet of land that will be taken by these flood channels is acceptable. And what we've done is we've reduced the taxable value of this parcel by the value of the 39,402 square feet, and came up with a new taxable value of $647,222. That's a taxable deduction of $189,129. So the $189,129 is the value of the square footage that these channels will be deducting from the developable square footage of this parcel. And the petitioner stated in their appeal that there's miscellaneous other typical building costs, development costs, that they think take away from the taxable value of their parcel. But the assessor's office has decided that only the issues that are addressed in document number, one second, please. So only the flood channels, the Solomon and the Kings Canyon channel, that are addressed in document number 474720 should be removed from the square footage, therefore reducing the value of the parcel by the numbers I previously stated. And thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions of the assessor? Do we have any questions for Josh or Scott that are on the phone right now? Okay.
Excuse me, do you have questions for us, or do we have questions for you?
We have questions for you, but I'm seeing none right now. Is there any further discussion that you would like to share with us? About what was...
Well,
go ahead.
Yes, if you don't mind. Yeah, I was just referring, we understand that normal development costs are associated with the development of the project, and we don't have a problem with recognizing those. In our appeal, we did not take away for having to dedicate a 10-foot strip along the property for the turn lane to, and to build the actual right-hand turn lane at all. But one issue is having to cross that bridge and having to use a clear span bridge was going to be $250,000 to actually get access off of 5th Street. And then looking at all the other properties that they're showing as comparables, they all have direct access, and most of them are on like William Street, streets that actually have freeway frontage. Also, in their assessment, they're looking at asking prices for property. Now, I don't see any of these comparable properties are actually sold. These are all just asking prices, and I don't see any comparable sold projects at all on this this sheet that they're looking at.
If I might,
I thought you would have to use, projects that have been sold. Now, unless I'm looking at the wrong section.
Yeah, Scott, Mallory Wilson has a comment for you.
Mallory Wilson. There's two separate sheets. There's one that has the listing comparables, and then which is on page 111, and then there's another one on 103 that has the sales.
Okay, so 102 the sales, so that's the $6.62 square feet. Okay. So comparable 1 and 2 are on William Street. Comparable 4 on Highway 50. I was just curious as how the weighted average was figured.
Well, those are huge streets, Williams and Highway 50. I mean, that's the prime real estate in Carson City. So I don't. As long as they've addressed that, that's fine.
Jeremy with the assessor's office. So when it comes to comparable 1 and 2, we did recognize that they're in superior locations, and comparable 3 is actually in an inferior location, and then comparable 4 is in a superior location. And these are the best sales we had to work with, pretty much the only sales we had to work with. So the way that we weighted these sales is comparable 1 is given 20% weight in the value conclusion. Comparable 2 is given 20% weight in the value conclusion. Comparable 3 is given 40% weight. And comparable 4 is given 20%. So 20, 40, 60 plus 40 equals 100%. So we've got all the weight there, but we've given the most weight to the $3.46 per square foot sale that is in an inferior location to be more conservative with the value conclusion that we arrived at $6.62 62 cents a square foot. And then you see sales 5 and 6 are not used in this average because they're too recent. But they will be used in the next, they will be used at the end of this year to reevaluate land values in that market area. So again, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are used as weight for this $6.62 value conclusion, with the most weight being given to the $3.46 a square foot sale. And we did consider location, traffic flow, pretty much anything that could contribute to the market appeal of these properties. Thank you.
Jeremy, quick question for you. Are any of the subject properties in the floodplain?
Are you talking about the comparables?
Yeah. Are any of the comparables in the floodplain?
Well, the fact that these comparables, let's see here. Okay, along Highway 50. Actually, I didn't determine whether or not, I didn't look into whether or not these properties were actually in flood zones, but Carson City Engineering has stated in an email that your parcel at the corner of 5th and Solomon has no special impact from flood issues that would cause it to need anything unusual to be developed. Engineering stated in an email that all you would need to do to develop your corner parcel, and that's the subject of this petition, all you would need to do is a little bit of grading and raise the foundation a little bit higher. I think they said 2 feet in the email. So again, when you talk about the flood zone impact on your parcel, it's really, it's not that significant. Thank you.
If I could make a statement, Rob Fellows is incorrect in that statement. I provided information showing that we cannot pull a permit until these channels are built and the property is taken out of the floodplain. Yes, and you were on the phone when we had a conversation. Well, perhaps it was, I thought you were with Lee Plummel, where he stated technically this project could be built, but you would have to go through substantial, you would have to go through and have it before the Planning Commission Board of Supervisors have it removed from the Lumber Ranch specific plan, which would take quite a bit. You would have to, so all the conditions that are associated with the property and recorded against the property would have to be removed in order to develop this as Rob Fellows is speaking. He's speaking to the fact of, yes, this property could, but he's not speaking to the fact of the current conditions of approval, the specific plan, the master plan, the phasing plan, all of that has conditions on here. So to do what Rob Fellows is saying, is not actually correct.
Well, yeah, you can't do that. This is Josh again. You can't do that simply because of the fact that there's an easement recorded on that property for the flood channel to be constructed that cannot be taken away. If that is taken away, that entire channel could not be built. If you remove that property from the SPA, the entire Lumber Ranch, you could not get that out of the floodplain if you lose that channel. So I think that it's a little bit of a misinterpretation to say that it only requires a couple of feet of fill, which would be hundreds of thousands of dollars anyways, a couple of feet of fill to do that, when I think that really it's close to over $500,000 by the time you put the channel in and do your crossing to even access the property. Because as it stands right now, you can't just get in your truck and drive through a channel. I just want the board to realize that, I think that when we're looking at comparables, this property still has quite a lot of work that needs to be done to it before we can actually be in a position where we can actually develop it and use it.
There's 1,100 CFS of water flowing through that Kings Canyon channel, and the channel's 74 feet wide from bank to bank. It's going to be 6 feet deep in the middle. The bottom section is going to be 26 feet wide, with the banks sloping out to round up to the 74 feet. So the only way to cross that channel is a clear span bridge is required as one of the conditions.
Well, also, one more thing to add too, and we won't go too much further into this. Actually, I believe our development agreement that we have with Ryder Homes, the adjacent landowner, prohibits us from removing that property from the SPA, and furthermore requires us to build that channel. Isn't that correct, Scott? We could never remove that.
Yes, and the easement that was recorded.
Yeah, no,
for the
our
benefit of-
agreement with them, yeah. No, they would never allow us to do that because that would render, that would definitely render their property with a lot of issues and a lot of problems. So.
Okay, any more comments, gentlemen? I'm gonna turn it back over to the assessor's office for right now.
Sure.
Denise Gillette with the Carson City Assessor's Office, and we absolutely recognize that this parcel is in a flood zone. We recognize that there are deed restrictions placed on this property due to the agreement they have with that adjacent parcel in order for the master plan, and it was recorded as part of the deed, so we absolutely recognize that as well. That's why we took the steps to remove the square footage that they required to for remediation to build those channels, and so we've addressed that. The remaining 3 acres, in fact, we will go back to Mr. Fellows, Rob Fellows, that stated that the remaining 3 acres, which is what we're looking at, because we've already made the recommendation prior to your vote to go ahead and remove that square footage and give them the benefit of the of not having to pay for the channels that have been placed per the deed. But the remaining 3 acres, in fact, can be developed, whether it's through the master plan. I understand that it will be difficult to remove it from the master plan. There's a lot of things in play with this property between this parcel and the other parcel. We can't take that into consideration as of yet because it's not taken place. However, we do recognize per the current deed that those channels were required, and we have taken those into consideration and reduced the value for that reason.
If we go to page 47 of the package, 4.4.1.1.6 clearly states that all channels are to be installed with the first development permit that is issued. 4.4.12 states the same thing. So the city would not issue a development permit for anything, so we couldn't even go in and get a floodplain permit to raise the site 2 feet to build on it, as you can see as outlined in these conditions right here.
Okay, we've got some rebuttal from the assessor.
Okay, so Jeremy Saposnik, on page 137, you'll see the subject parcel. You'll see the subject parcel's APN. We are treating APN 10-041-16 as its own parcel. It has its own APN. It's its own unit. So to continue to try to blend it in with the overall Lompa Ranch development is really not profitable for us. It's not helpful. If you would just focus on APN number 10-041-16 and recognize the adjustments we have made to it, you'd realize that there's really no need to talk about the rest of the Lompa Ranch development. Thank you.
Well, I don't agree with that at all. I think that the Lompa Ranch development has restrictions on this parcel that dictate its value and dictate when it is to be developed. So even though it is its own separate parcel, it is included in the Lompa Ranch North SPA, and it is conditioned with those conditions.
And it has always been part of the Lompa Ranch specific plan, not at our doing, but as doing of Carson City. We just acquired properties that were in the original Lompa Ranch specific plan. We modified it, and called the Long Branch North Specific Plan for our property, but there was approximately hundreds of acres in the original specific plan. Yeah.
That's fine. I think that unless there's anything else, we're nothing more to say.
You're good right now, okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay.
We're just talking about this 4-acre parcel that's been reduced to 3 acres.
Yes, that's what we're concerned about here at this board level. Okay, with that said, we don't, Scott and Josh, we don't have any questions for you or the assessor, so right now I'm going to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to reduce the value of the property and re-stipulate it as 3-acre parcel instead of 4. We would be reducing it by $129,129 for a new taxable land value of $647,222 for the 2017, 2018 taxes and 2018 taxes, 2019 taxes.
Roy, did you mean to say 189,129?
Yes. What I miss?
You said 129. So in your motion, you were saying that the reduced value is the taxable value is reduced by $189,129.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's on parcel number 010-041-16. That's
Okay.
Solomon and Fifth.
There's our motion. Do I have a second on that motion? Mallory, you have a quizzical look on your face. Okay, well, we have a motion, and we can discuss the motion if I have a second.
Second.
Okay, and Jill seconds the motion, so discussion on the motion. Mallory. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion in the second?
May I have the motion again, please?
I'm sorry?
Repeat the motion.
Okay, Roy, you're up.
Okay. I recommend that we reduce the size of the 4-acre lot to 3.9 acres and reevaluate the...
3.09.
What?
3.09.
That's
3.9.
3.09 acres, or 134,838 square feet, and give the parcel a reduction of $189,129 and have a new taxable land value at $647,222 for the 2017, 2018, and 2018-2019 taxes on APN 010-041-16 at Solomon and Fifth.
Does that work? Okay. Thank you. That was our clarification. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
Aye.
You opposed?
Yes.
4 for, 1 opposition. So it carries 4 to 1. And then so at this point, Scott and Josh, you have till March 12th at 5 p.m. to appeal to the Nevada State Board of Equalization if you choose to do so.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Everybody looks like they're hungry. I'm going to slow down here.
Can you hear my stomach growling?
Yeah, right. Okay, on to Agenda H, public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda. Seeing that there is no public comment, we're going to go over to the assessor for final remarks.
I would I appreciate everybody, and again, I apologize for this meeting lasting so long. We did try to spread them out a little bit. this is an election year, and so being an election year, we could potentially lose 2 board members. And so I just want to acknowledge the hard work that you guys have all done for the board. And Member Rasner, if you're not back next year, we can't tell you how much we appreciate your total service that you've done. It's been awesome. And Member Mallory, or Member Wilson, the same. Sorry. Anyway, but it might be my last turn, or my last board meeting as well. So we're hoping not, but I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to help us out and to make sure that we're taxing or assessing everybody fairly. And you guys have done awesome. So thank you very, very much.
I just want to make a comment that as volunteers up here, sometimes the meetings are easy and sometimes they're very long. And that's kind of what we bought into to be part of this. But I really appreciate the district attorney's office and the assessor's office for all the hard work that you guys do, because some of this stuff just seems to go on forever, and you have to go back, and I think you all do a really great job of communicating with the appellants and everything else. And I think probably because a lot of your hard work, we don't have as many of the appellants as we possibly could. So, kudos to you guys, and if I didn't upset anybody, I'll probably be here for 2 more years. So, item, item H? I lost my agenda. Anyway, we're past public comment, so the final agenda item, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion and a second?
And I second that.
Jill seconds it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, seeing none, have a good lunch.